My name is Riley. I'm 28 years old, and I've spent most of my life fading into the background of my own family. If my sister Ava, the 31, now was the sun, I was the shadow that followed her around. She was always louder, brighter, and somehow always in the spotlight while I was the one holding the camera clapping in the background. Growing up, it wasn't just favoritism, it was full-on emotional neglect. My parents, David and Sandra, had this unspoken rule that Ava came first. Always. If she got a B on a test, it was, she's trying her best. If I got an A, silence. I used to think I was imagining things that maybe I was just being dramatic or needy. But kids aren't stupid. You can tell when your wins aren't celebrated, when your pain is ignored, when your worth is measured by someone else's glow. It wasn't just about grades or birthday parties. It was about the little things, like how my art projects got shoved into drawers while Ava's science trophies got a spot on the living room shelf, or how they'd sit through her soccer games like it was the Super Bowl, but couldn't be bothered to attend my school play where I had the lead role. I kept telling myself, they love me just differently. But that kind of love doesn't soothe you when you're sitting alone after your dance recital, watching all the other kids rush to their parents' arms wide open. By the time I hit 17, I knew one thing for sure: I needed out. So the moment I turned 18, I packed up and left. No dramatic exit, no yelling, just silence. I moved across the city, got a job waiting tables, and started building my own life brick by painful brick. And for the first time, I felt something that scared and excited me: freedom. That freedom came with a heavy cost, though. Because while I was out here figuring things out, Ava was still playing the golden child role, and she made sure I never forgot my place. She'd feed my parents lies about me, said I was partying, using drugs, and blowing through relationships like it was nothing. It wasn't true, not even a little. But they believed her, instantly. I offered to take a drug test to prove I wasn't some out-of-control mess. My dad didn't even look up from his coffee when I said it. My mom, she just told me she wasn't in the mood for drama. So I did the only thing that made sense: I stopped calling. I blocked their numbers. 2 full years of radio silence. It was the only way to stop feeling like I was walking into a house where love had conditions. And in that space, without their noise, I started to grow. I built something beautiful. My little apartment became my sanctuary. I worked hard, landed a marketing job I loved, met someone kind and genuine, and started rediscovering what it meant to be me, not Ava's sister, just Riley. Still, no matter how far you run, some things find you. When I was 25, I got a call. I never expected my dad had been rushed to the hospital. And despite everything, my heart pulled me back. I sat by his bedside for days, feeding him soup, cracking awkward jokes, pretending like we hadn't been strangers for years. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was hope. Either way, it reopened a door I thought I'd slammed shut. We started talking again. Hesitant, clumsy conversations, but it felt like progress. Mom thawed too. She even hugged me once, which, considering the last time she touched me was to yank a brush through my hair, at age 10 felt weirdly monumental. Ava wasn't thrilled. She'd pop in during hospital visits and barely acknowledge me. She made sarcastic jabs, pretending to joke, but always managing to sting. Like when she said, "Glad to see you've stopped playing the victim for attention." I just smiled and kept my mouth shut. I wasn't going to let her drag me into another round of emotional tug-of-war. Around this time, my parents started opening up about some financial stress. Nothing dramatic, just hints about tight months and unexpected bills. I offered to help, not because they asked, but because I wanted to rebuild something with them. And yeah, maybe a small part of me thought, if I support them now, maybe they'll finally see me. I covered utilities for a few months, paid off one of their credit cards, never said a word about it. I didn't want gratitude, I wanted peace. And for a little while it worked. They'd call just to chat, they'd ask about my job. They even posted a birthday message for me on Facebook, which, trust me, was headline-worthy in my family. Ava hated it. She rolled her eyes when Dad mentioned how I'd helped out, said I was trying to buy affection. But for once, they didn't take her side, and that felt like a win. Then came the next chapter. A year later, my partner Eli proposed. It was simple, private, and absolutely perfect. I was glowing. We set a date, picked a venue, sent out invites. And yes, I invited my parents and Ava. Despite everything, I wanted them there. Because no matter how hurt I'd been, I still craved that image in my head, the one where my mom zips up my dress, my dad gives a toast, and my sister hugs me like she means it. Spoiler. That image shattered. What happened next wasn't just disappointing. It was something that burned so deep I don't know if I'll ever fully heal from it. Planning the wedding was like building a dream I'd never been allowed to have. Every detail, every color, every piece of it was something I chose, not Ava, not my mom, not anyone else. Just me. That made it feel sacred in a way. Eli and I picked a Saturday in early spring. The weather was perfect, not too hot, not too chilly, just that sweet spot where even the air feels celebratory. We sent out our invitations months in advance, made sure to check in with guests, and arranged everything to be as convenient and welcoming as possible. And yeah, I sent the invite to my parents and Ava too. Despite all the history, I wanted them there. Deep down, I think I still believed they'd show up, maybe even try. I told myself they couldn't possibly ignore something this big. After all, it was my wedding day. But you know what they say, old patterns don't break just because you want them to. The day of the wedding, I was getting ready in a small bridal suite at the venue. My hair was curled, makeup done, dress hanging on the door. I looked in the mirror and hardly recognized myself. I looked happy, nervous, sure, but excited. The room buzzed with my friends and Eli's sister, who had basically adopted me as her own sibling at this point. People were laughing, pouring mimosas, snapping photos. It was everything I wanted. Except they weren't there. At first, I wasn't worried. We planned for early afternoon, and I figured maybe my parents were just running late. Ava was always dramatic, always made a point of arriving just late enough to be noticed. But the clock kept ticking. 5 minutes, 10, 15, still no sign. I started to feel that old familiar knot in my stomach. The one I used to get when I'd wait in the school hallway hoping someone would pick me up on time. "Should we wait?" I asked my maid of honor quietly. She frowned, checking her phone. "Only for a bit, babe. Everyone else is here." I nodded. "Let's give it another 10. Those 10 minutes passed like glue dripping down a wall. Sticky, heavy, slow, every second stretched. I kept peeking toward the venue doors like they'd walk in with big, apologetic smiles. Maybe they got caught in traffic. Maybe Ava had a wardrobe malfunction. Then, as if the universe wanted to slap me with the truth, I got a notification. A photo. Ava had posted on Instagram. A sunny selfie with our parents all grinning like they'd just won the lottery. The caption, "Family lunch. So good to be home." The timestamp. 15 minutes after the ceremony was supposed to begin. They weren't just skipping. They were throwing a casual get-together. On my wedding day. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just this quiet internal snap like a rubber band stretched too far. I felt myself freeze. Everyone around me blurred into background noise. No call, no apology, no excuse. They chose her again. I don't remember much of the ceremony after that. I walked down the aisle, smiled through it, kissed Eli, cut the cake, danced. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't sad. I was done. It didn't even feel like grief anymore. It felt like clarity. The next day, when things calmed down and our guests left, I sent a message. Just one. Short, direct. I saw the post. "Thanks for confirming what I've always known. Please don't contact me again. I'm not your second best anymore. I'm not your anything." They responded, of course. First came my mom's. "We didn't think it would be a big deal since Ava's lunch was already planned." Then my dad tried the classic, "We were hoping to come after, but your timing didn't work for us." Ava didn't even bother pretending, just sent a smug, "Not everything is about you, Riley." That was it. I blocked them. Phone, email, socials, all of it. You'd think that would be the end, right? Clean break. Fresh start. But no. Because when people lose control over you, they panic. Suddenly, I was selfish. Suddenly, I owed them a conversation. Suddenly, my boundaries became their crisis. My inbox started filling with messages from extended family, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, uncles who barely remembered my birthday. They all chimed in. "You only get one family. Maybe they made a mistake, but was it worth cutting them off? Your parents are heartbroken." Right, heartbroken. But not enough to miss dessert at Ava's lunch. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. Because I was tired of explaining my pain to people who'd never really listened to it in the first place. Instead, I poured myself into my new life. Eli and I went on our honeymoon, and for the first time in forever, I felt weightless. No guilt, no begging for crumbs, just peace. But that peace came with shadows. Some nights I'd lie awake wondering, was I too harsh? Did I overreact? And then I'd remember the photo. The smiles, the choice they made without even flinching. No, I wasn't too harsh. I was finally being honest with myself. It's weird, isn't it? How we can chase love from people who've shown us 1,000 times they don't have any to give. How we build our lives around their absence, trying to fill it with hope. But hope can rot if you let it. I've learned that silence can be healing. Distance can be peace. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. That doesn't mean I don't miss what could have been. I do. I mourn the parents I never really had, the sister who never wanted me in her spotlight, but I no longer mourn me in that story. Because the version of Riley who needed their approval doesn't exist anymore. She left. And in her place, someone stronger. Someone married, supported, and free. Still, life has a funny way of testing your peace. And a few weeks later, that peace got tested in the worst and most ridiculous way possible. Because Ava, she wasn't done. Not even close. Peace didn't last long. Eli and I were back from our honeymoon, still in that soft, golden haze of newlywed life. We were learning how to blend our rhythms, laundry routines, grocery habits, who got which side of the bed. It was simple domestic warmth. I was finally living a version of happiness that felt earned. Then came the message. No apology, no olive branch, just Ava in all her entitlement asking for money. It landed in my inbox like a punch. Hey, so I have this business idea I'm working on. I know you're doing well now, and it would really help if you could support me. Think of it as an investment. Let me know. I stared at the screen, reread it, then laughed out loud. This woman who hadn't even congratulated me on my marriage, who'd deliberately thrown a lunch on my wedding day and smiled through it, was now asking me to fund her project. The nerve. I didn't reply right away. I needed time to cool off to figure out how to respond without spiraling back into that old pattern where I bend over backwards to keep the peace. But before I could say anything, she sent a second message. It's kind of selfish to ignore me. Just because you're married now doesn't mean you're better than us. If you really cared about this family, you'd help. There it was, the guilt trip. The same script she'd always used when things didn't go her way. It used to work. It used to make me question everything. Not anymore. This time I replied, Ava, I don't owe you anything. I've spent my whole life playing backup in your show. You made your choices. You made it clear where we stand. I won't be financing anything. Good luck. It felt good. Not angry, not petty, just clear. She didn't take it well. Within an hour, my phone lit up with messages from my parents. My mom started with her usual passive-aggressive tone. I'm disappointed in how cold you've become. Dad followed with, Ava's just trying to build a future. Why can't you support her like family should? Then came the big twist. They claimed they had dipped into Ava's college fund years ago to help me move out. A bold lie considering I'd worked 2 jobs and paid my own rent from day one. But suddenly they were rewriting history to make me look like the thief. And now apparently helping Ava was me repaying a family debt. I was floored. I sat there phone in hand just numb. Not because it hurt, because I realized they were willing to twist the truth again just to justify Ava's behavior. But I wasn't playing along anymore. I didn't respond. That silence seemed to infuriate them more than any fight ever could. A few days later, my parents showed up at my apartment. I wasn't home, thankfully, but my neighbor texted me about it. Said they were standing outside the building arguing with the concierge when they weren't allowed up. They left a note at the front desk. A folded piece of paper with my name scribbled on the front. Inside, we're your real family. This distance isn't healthy. Let's fix things together. Ava's still your sister. I didn't open the door. I didn't respond. Because here's the truth, you can't fix something with people who don't believe they've broken anything. And yet, the messages kept coming. Emails, texts, even comments on my old Instagram posts. They'd alternate between guilt-tripping and demanding like they couldn't decide whether to play the victims or the enforcers. Then it escalated. Ava emailed me a proposal. A full PowerPoint presentation outlining her business plan. Something to do with subscription boxes for luxury pet clothes, and a section labeled Funding Strategy. Right there underlined was my name. Initial family investment $15,000 to $1,000 from Riley. I laughed so hard I cried. This wasn't even manipulation anymore, it was delusion. But what truly broke me, was the note at the end of the presentation. Riley, this is a chance to prove you're not as bitter and selfish as everyone thinks. That sentence felt like someone struck a match and dropped it into everything I'd worked to rebuild. I blocked her. Again. Phone, email, everything. Then I blocked my parents, for the second time. I'd tried. I'd offered peace, forgiveness, even money. And they chose Ava again. Not just on my wedding day, but in every moment after. They didn't just ignore me. They used me, tried to spin their own failure into my responsibility. I was done. Truly, completely done. The thing is, when you set boundaries with people who've never respected yours, they don't see it as protection. They see it as betrayal, and they retaliate. That retaliation came through whispers. I started hearing from extended family. Distant cousins asking why I cut off my parents after all they did for me. Family friends tagging me in vague posts about loyalty and entitled children. I didn't respond to any of them. Because I wasn't going to debate my pain with people who only knew half the story. And the people who really knew me, they stayed close. Eli, my friends, his family, they wrapped me in the kind of support I never got growing up. Not the kind you have to earn. The kind you're just given, freely. That's when it hit me. You don't have to keep people in your life just because you share DNA. Family isn't blood. Family is who shows up, who listens, who doesn't try to rewrite your story when the truth makes them uncomfortable. I'd spent years chasing a relationship that never really existed, trying to prove I was worthy of love to people who were never willing to give it. But not anymore. I'm building something new now, and if they can't respect it from afar, they don't get a seat at the table. Still, I thought that would be the end of it. Until a letter arrived. A thick envelope hand-delivered. No return address. Inside was something I never expected. A notice from a lawyer. I'll never forget the feeling of holding that envelope in my hands. It was thick, heavy, like it was carrying something it shouldn't. My name was written across the front in messy cursive, my mom's handwriting. But the document inside, that was from a law office. At first, I thought it was some weird prank, or maybe an empty threat meant to scare me into calling. But once I opened it, I realized just how far they were willing to go. It wasn't a joke. It was a formal letter on a letterhead signed by an actual attorney outlining something I couldn't believe. I was reading a claim for financial reimbursement. According to the document, my parents were requesting that I reimburse them for past expenses incurred on my behalf. Things like unrecouped child-rearing costs, early rent assistance, and this one really knocked the air out of me: emotional damages from estrangement. Emotional damages. They actually put a dollar amount on my absence. 112,400 animated. I remember just staring at the paper, not blinking, just sitting on the edge of my couch with this ridiculous letter in my lap, trying to process what kind of parents sue their own daughter for growing up. There was even a spreadsheet attached. Line items. Grocery bills. School supplies. A pair of sneakers from 2007. It was so absurd I almost laughed. Almost. But beneath the absurdity was something uglier, something cruel. It wasn't about money. Not really. It was about control. It was about trying to shame me back into submission. If emotional blackmail hadn't worked, they figured maybe financial blackmail would. Spoiler, it didn't. Still, I wasn't stupid. I knew this could turn messy if I didn't handle it right. So I called a lawyer someone Eli's friend recommended. She was sharp, direct, and didn't even flinch when I explained what was going on. "You're not the first person to be sued by toxic parents," she said. "Unfortunately, you won't be the last." She reviewed everything, then looked at me and said, "They don't have a case, not a legal one anyway." But emotionally, that's where they're trying to bleed you. And she was right. The letter wasn't a real lawsuit, just a threat, a way to scare me, to shake me up. But it did something else instead. It clarified everything. I wasn't crazy for cutting them off. I wasn't overreacting. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was what I'd been dealing with my entire life, dressed up in paperwork and bad intentions. The next morning, I drafted my response. Polite, firm, final. This letter confirms that I do not owe you any financial obligation, nor am I responsible for decisions you made of your own volition. Any further contact, legal or otherwise, will be considered harassment and handled accordingly. I sent it through my attorney. Let her be the wall between me and whatever firestorm they were trying to start. After that, the silence was deafening. For 2 weeks, nothing. No texts, no emails, no DMs. It was like they vanished, and for the first time I breathed. But like always, that breath didn't last long. Because when the guilt doesn't work and the threats don't stick, some people go nuclear. Ava started posting online. At first, it was vague. Quotes about toxic siblings and narcissistic trauma. Hashtags like #FamilyFirst and #betrayal. But then she got specific. A storytime video on TikTok, her face to camera, tears in her eyes. My sister abandoned our family after we raised her. She left our sick dad. She took everything and now refuses to help. I guess money changes people. It blew up. She played the victim like she was born for it. Comments poured in. Strangers defending her, telling her to stay strong. Some even found my profile and started leaving nasty comments under old posts. It felt like drowning in someone else's lie. Eli was furious. "We could sue her for defamation," he said. But I didn't want to play that game. I didn't want to fight fire with fire. I just wanted peace. I wanted my life back. So I did what I've always done. I documented everything. Screenshots, messages, dates, times. I made sure if this ever got legal, I had every piece of truth in my corner. And then I disappeared. Not literally, but digitally. I locked down my social media, changed my number, told close friends and Eli's family how to reach me, and went dark everywhere else. It felt drastic, but necessary. I was tired of being a character in Ava's performance, tired of being the villain in someone else's story. I had spent years trying to rewrite our family's script, make it a happy one, make it fair, but they kept handing me a pen dipped in poison. So I stopped writing their version, started living mine. Still, it's hard. Grieving a family that's still alive, it's a strange kind of pain. There's no funeral, no closure, just empty space where love should have been. And it gets lonelier before it gets lighter. Some nights, I lie in bed next to Eli listening to him breathe and wonder what it would feel like to have a mother who called just to say she missed me. A father who didn't keep a running tab of every dollar he spent. A sister who didn't see me as a competitor but as kin. But those aren't the people I got. And I've stopped waiting for them to change. Instead, I've been investing in the family I'm building. Eli and I adopted a dog. A chaotic little rescue mutt named Beans. He's loud, messy, and absolutely obsessed with me. He follows me room to room like a furry shadow, reminding me that love doesn't need conditions or guilt, just presence. We're also house hunting, something I never thought I'd be excited about. But now it feels like a fresh start. A new chapter written entirely by me. And yet there's one more storm brewing. Because people like Ava, they don't go quiet for long. And the next message I got wasn't from her. It was from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my cousin Maya. The message from Maya came in the form of a voice memo. Not a text, not a call. A minute and 42 seconds of breathy urgency sent to my backup number I'd only shared with a handful of people. Riley. Hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but you need to know something. I've been seeing what's happening with Ava, and I can't stay quiet anymore. I blinked at my phone. Maya and I used to be close cousins who stayed up watching rom-coms at family sleepovers, whispering about crushes and future dreams. But once I moved out and the family lines were drawn, she faded to the background. I hadn't heard her voice in nearly 4 years. I sat down, took a breath, and hit play again. Her words came out fast, like she'd been rehearsing them for weeks. Maybe she had. Ava's been lying to everyone. That TikTok? That whole performance? Yeah, fake. She told people your dad had a second heart surgery, that you left him in a hospital bed to go drink mojitos in Mexico. None of it happened. And the worst part? Your parents know. I froze. They're letting her say it. They've been feeding her details. Your mom even told Aunt Lisa you were acting unstable after the wedding. I didn't believe it then, but now I'm just done pretending. By the time her message ended, my hands were shaking. I shouldn't have been surprised. I really shouldn't have. But somehow, hearing it from someone inside the circle made it real in a way nothing else had. They weren't just hurting me behind closed doors. They were rewriting my story for anyone who'd listen. I called her. She answered on the first ring. Hey, she said softly. I wasn't sure you'd respond. I wasn't sure either, I admitted. But thank you for telling me. Maya sighed. I wish I'd done it sooner. We talked for an hour. She filled in blanks I didn't even know existed. Things I hadn't seen because I'd cut contact. Apparently, Ava had been floating this narrative for months that I was mentally unwell, that I'd abandoned the family, that I'd only reconnected with my parents for money and then ghosted them again. And worse, my parents had gone along with it, nodding, agreeing, adding spice to the story where needed. You're not crazy, Maya said, voice firm. They've been gaslighting you for years. I knew that. Deep down, I'd always known. But hearing someone say it out loud, someone who used to sit across from me at Thanksgiving dinner, someone who'd seen the same favoritism I lived through, it hit different. After we hung up, I sat in silence. The dog curled up at my feet, completely unbothered by the world unraveling around me. Eli walked in a few minutes later holding 2 mugs of tea like he knew. Talk to Maya, he asked gently. I nodded. She confirmed everything. He handed me the tea and sat beside me. What do you want to do? That question had been hanging in the air for weeks. What now? I'd cut them off. I'd set boundaries. I'd walked away. But still they found ways to twist the knife. Through lies, through guilt, through social media, and now through public humiliation. I looked at Eli and said, I'm done defending myself, but I'm not staying silent anymore. He just nodded. Then let's do this right. The next day, I posted a single story to my locked-down social account. No drama, no name-calling, just truth. A photo from our wedding, Eli and I smiling surrounded by real love. No family in sight. Then a paragraph. I've stayed quiet for too long. Out of fear, out of shame, out of hope, but I won't let other people rewrite my life. I've been lied about, blamed, sued, gaslit, but here's what's real. I've built a life I'm proud of, and no amount of guilt or manipulation will pull me back into the shadows. I choose peace. I choose truth. I choose me. I didn't name names. Didn't need to. The silence after that was louder than anything Ava ever screamed into a camera. For the first time, I felt free. Maya messaged again later that night. That was powerful. You made them squirm. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That post wasn't for revenge, it was for closure. But apparently, Ava didn't get the memo. Because 2 days later, I got a DM from a burner account. No profile picture, no followers. One sentence. If you think you've won, you haven't seen what's coming. Childish, predictable, but still a little chill crawled down my spine. I wasn't scared, just tired. Tired of the games. Tired of being a plot point in someone else's tantrum. I wasn't playing anymore. But life has always had other plans. Because just when I thought the worst was over, when I truly believed the storm had passed, a letter arrived. Again. Only this time it wasn't from a lawyer. It was from a bank. Eli handed it to me when I got home from the grocery store. Looks important, he said. I opened it, read the first few lines, then sat down hard on the kitchen stool. It was a mortgage statement, except it wasn't ours. It was from my parents' address, and somehow my name was listed as a cosigner. My pulse kicked into overdrive. I never signed anything. I never agreed to anything. And yet here it was, my name attached to a loan I had no idea existed. I called the bank immediately. Waited on hold for 47 minutes, heart thudding the whole time. When I finally got someone on the line and explained the situation, she pulled up the documents. Yes, we do have your signature on file, she said cheerfully. I asked for a copy. She emailed it over. And when I opened the file, I felt sick. It wasn't just my name typed under the signature line. It was my signature. Or something that looked a lot like it. I stared at the email on my screen, hands cold, chest tight. It was my name, in ink, on a mortgage I never agreed to. Except, it wasn't my handwriting. It looked close, familiar even, but it was off just enough for the hairs on my arms to stand up. The slant was wrong, the loops too perfect. It was a forged signature. Someone had signed my name on a legal document. And there were only 2 people who had access to that kind of personal information, my parents. I sat back trying to slow my breathing. My thoughts were a tangle of disbelief and rage. They didn't just lie. They didn't just manipulate. They committed fraud. Eli came over quietly and placed a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I nodded slowly, though I wasn't sure if that was true. They used my name, without permission, to secure a loan on their house. He didn't say anything right away. He just stood there beside me, letting the moment settle. And then he said, calm but firm, you know we have to do something. I knew. This wasn't a petty argument. This wasn't about emotional boundaries anymore. This was criminal. And this time I couldn't afford to stay silent. So I called my lawyer. She didn't flinch. We're filing a fraud report, she said, and contacting the bank's fraud department immediately. The next few days were a whirlwind. I had to provide proof of my real signature, give statements, sign affidavits. I felt like I was being pulled into a storm I never asked for, but I kept going. Because for the first time I had no guilt, no shame, just truth. The bank started an internal investigation. My attorney filed paperwork. I submitted copies of my driver's license, signature, old lease documents, job contracts. Anything that could show what my actual handwriting looked like. And then we waited. During that wait, something inside me shifted. I stopped feeling like a daughter. I stopped wondering what my parents might say or how Ava might spin it. I didn't care anymore. They crossed a line you don't come back from. I wasn't their daughter. I was their resource. And when I stopped being useful, they decided to use me anyway. That realization hurt, but it also freed me. A week later, my lawyer called. The bank confirmed the signature was forged, she said. They're moving forward with legal action, and you've been fully cleared of any liability. I exhaled so hard I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath for days. What does that mean for my parents, I asked. She paused. They could face criminal charges. I didn't cheer, I didn't cry, I just nodded. Good. Because the truth is, they chose this. Every step of the way they had chances to stop. To be honest, to make amends. Instead, they doubled down. And now the consequences were theirs to carry. That night, I sat on the couch with Beans asleep in my lap and Eli beside me. We didn't say much, just existed in the silence of truth finally being enough. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night. A few days later, I received one last message. From Ava. Not a threat this time, not a guilt trip, just raw. They're blaming me, said it was my idea. I didn't know they'd actually do it. I didn't think they'd go that far. There was no apology, no ownership, just an unraveling of her image, her narrative, her armor. And honestly, I didn't care. I didn't reply. Because Ava didn't get to cry now. She watched this play out from the beginning. She helped twist the knife every time I tried to pull it out. She wasn't a bystander, she was a participant. That message was the last time I heard from any of them. My parents stopped trying after the legal fallout began. The charges didn't stick. Turns out the bank didn't want the publicity, but the damage was done. Their credit was ruined. Their house fell into foreclosure a few months later. And me, I bought a new house with Eli. A small place on the edge of the city with a garden and creaky floors that sing when you walk at night. It's not fancy, but it's mine. And no one had to forge a signature to get it. Maya visits often now. She brings wine and sarcasm and stories from our chaotic family tree. We laugh a lot. Sometimes cry, but mostly we talk like two women who finally see the truth for what it is. Freedom doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it's a quiet room with a locked door and no one pounding on the other side. Sometimes it's a dog snoring beside you and a partner who listens when you speak. Sometimes it's no longer feeling like you're the villain in someone else's fantasy. It's just peace. Looking back, I don't regret anything. Not the silence, not the boundaries, not the legal battle. Because I know now some families don't fall apart. They were never whole to begin with. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting back. It's walking away, closing the door, lighting your own fire, and letting it warm the home you chose to build. For anyone who's ever felt like the outsider in their own family, here's what I've learned. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they knew you as a child. You're allowed to walk away from the people who raised you, especially if they taught you to shrink. And you're allowed to grow bigger than their vision of you. Let them talk. Let them twist. Let them fade. Your story is still yours. And mine is just beginning. Story 2. My sibling knocked. My mother and wife assisted them in concealing it. They want me to raise the child and cover my brother's legal expenses 6 months later. Hi everyone. Prior to starting today's video, I need your assistance. One of the greatest ways you can help us out is to subscribe, since we've observed the channel is losing some of its popularity. It's simple, free, and helps us continue to provide you with amazing content. Your assistance is much appreciated. Together, let's continue to build this channel. Many thanks. The video subreddit will now begin. I never imagined that I'd be blogging here, but I need to vent. The 3 individuals who were meant to support me really caught me off guard. My own mother, my brother, and my wife. This is how it all transpired. For the past 5 years, I, a 28-year-old man, have been employed as a software developer. Worked my way up to senior developer at a tiny software startup. We create CRM platforms, payment systems, and corporate solutions, that sort of thing. Although it wasn't the most glamorous job in the world, I was able to purchase a respectable 2-bedroom home in a desirable area 2 years ago because to the money I made from it. Purchased it prior to marriage. Even if my firm isn't as well known as Google or Apple, we're nonetheless strong. $90K basic salary with yearly incentives that often total between $15 and $20K perks for health that truly cover stuff. A 401k match is the type of steadiness that most men my age still long for. When I initially started, my 42-year-old supervisor Chester took me under his wing. He is an old-school programmer who went into management yet continues to work with programming. He taught me more than simply recommended practices for coding. He taught me how to negotiate my pay and handle workplace politics. Helped me manage customer expectations without making unrealistic promises, and it earned me an additional $12,000 on my most recent promotion. Then 3 years ago at a friend's home party, my wife, now ex-wife Megan, a 26-year-old woman, entered my life. She was a stunning blonde nurse with a pediatric specialty who worked at the nearby hospital. Everyone could see the spark between us right away. One of those relationships where you feel like you've been friends for years. My attention was initially drawn to the way she lighted up while discussing her work. Not only superficial information, but the technical facets of pediatric treatment. Even for a techie like myself, she was able to make sense of complicated medical processes. Astute, committed, and passionate about her work. It was just what I wanted. Before I proposed, we dated for a year. We had a little weeding at her parents' church after she sobbed and said yes. Only about 50 individuals, close relatives and friends. The 2.1-carat diamond ring with a platinum band cost me 2 months' pay. To put things in perspective, my 24-year-old younger brother Ed has always been the star of the show despite being 4 years younger. More attractive, more sociable, and more adept at swaying our mother to grant him his wishes. In high school, he was a varsity baseball player. I was the youngster from the chess club who spent my leisure time creating websites. A classic case of mama's boy. I was the responsible, quiet one who put in a lot of effort but was never quite up to mom's standards. Ed was unquestionably mom's favorite, but dad was always fair to us both. That relationship remained constant. At family get-togethers, the difference between us was almost laughable. Ed was 2 hours late for Thanksgiving 3 years ago. With a female he met the previous evening, but without the side dish he had promised. I had been there since the morning helping to prepare the turkey, and instead of being irritated, Mom worried over both of them. When Mom wasn't looking, Dad just poured me an additional glass of water and shook his head. Dad is a mechanical engineer by profession. Methodical and logical, it follows the rules. I learned how to change the oil in my first automobile from him, how to repair a dripping faucet, all that crap about the practical dad. He admired my coding work even if he never understood it. I had landed a good job. Mom quit early from her job as an elementary school teacher when Dad's engineering company took off. Had a special place in her heart for Ed, whom she referred to as her creative, sensitive soul. I immediately started coding after graduation, whereas Ed worked at a variety of occupations. After a few months of employment, he would become bored and leave. Had a tale about toxic management all the time. In the meantime, his credit card debts somehow ended up being an issue for his parents, twice. I bailed him out of 2 small legal issues, one with trespassing at an ex-girlfriend's place and another involving driving with an expired license. Cost me around $3,000, which he said he would reimburse as soon as circumstances improved. In the end, I assisted him in landing a sales position with my business. My supervisor, Chester, was apprehensive. The previous year, he had met Ed at our company's Christmas party and had not been pleased. However, I endorsed him. I promised to keep him in line. I thought Ed would have some stability there, and he had the charm for it. Besides family protects. Family, right? Our company offered a base salary of $65,000 plus commission for the sales position. Not bad considering Ed's patchy record. I coached him on our products for 3 weekends. According to industry jargon, this was his opportunity to create something tangible. He said all the right things and appeared appreciative. I got one of those from Chester. You must be aware of what you're doing. When I introduced them, they look. Megan and I had a fairly smooth transition to married life. Although it wasn't suitable for a Hollywood film, our relationship was strong. We discussed forming a family, in a year or 2 perhaps. I worked on the house on the weekends, building a deck in the backyard and installing a new kitchen island. All that stuff for homeowners. The place looked like it was from one of those home design magazines thanks to Megan's decorations. In that first year, I invested roughly $20,000 in home improvements. The master bathroom was updated with heated floors and a rainfall shower, and the living room was given new hardwood flooring. The backyard was landscaped. Every dollar I invested increased the property's value and provided us with a place we both cherished. It was a good first year. On Sunday morning, we had our usual pancakes. Date nights on Wednesdays. Sporadic weekend visits to her parents' lake home. We took a cooking class together and threw game nights for our friends. Couples activities are what you're expected to do. We appeared content. After a year or so, I was given a significant project at work that involved rebuilding a large hospital chain's payment system. The irony isn't lost on me now. I was working longer hours, often coming home after Megan was asleep. Weekend work became normal. The project was supposed to last 3 months, but stretched to 6. I started missing those Sunday pancakes, those Wednesday date nights. The project was a career maker. Successfully implementing a new payment system for a $2 billion company would put me on the fast track for a senior architect position. Bigger salary, stock options, more control over which projects I worked on. I explained all this to Megan, and she seemed to understand. She even brought me dinner at the office a few times during those first weeks of overtime. During this time, Megan made a new friend at work. Alexis, this travel nurse from Seattle who was doing a 6-month rotation at our hospital. Alexis was everything. Megan wasn't single, carefree kind of wild. Suddenly, Megan was going out for girls' nights with Alexis and coming home with stories about clubs I didn't know existed in our city. I was too busy with my project to really notice how much things were changing. Things started feeling weird about 4 months before things imploded right around when my big project was wrapping up. The system was finally launched, and I was looking forward to getting back to normal life with Megan. But somewhere along the way, normal had shifted. Megan's schedule got unpredictable. She'd always been consistent with her hospital shifts, 3 12-hour days, then 4 days off. But suddenly she was picking up extra shifts and going out with coworkers more often. When I asked, she'd say the hospital was short-staffed or that her friend Amber was going through a breakup and needed support. I checked our bank statements one night and noticed Megan had been withdrawing $200 to $300 in cash every week for the past 2 months. When I asked about it casually, she said something vague about preferring cash for small purchases, and girls' nights out made sense on the surface, but it was new behavior. I tried to reconnect. Suggested we take a weekend trip to celebrate my project being done. She said she couldn't get the time off. I offered to cook her favorite dinner. She texted last minute saying Alexis needed her help with something. A rational person might have connected these dots sooner, but I was still operating on trust. 6 years of building enterprise systems had trained me to look for multiple data points before declaring a bug. I needed more evidence. Then there was the phone stuff. She'd be texting constantly with this little smile on her face, but the second I walked in the room, phone flipped over. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say just Amber or work group chat. After I got Ed the sales job at my company, he started coming to office. Happy hours more. Megan would show up too, saying she wanted to support both of us. There was this one night at Bolly's where I got stuck talking to a client who showed up unexpectedly. I was across the room for maybe 45 minutes when I finally broke free. I found Megan and Ed in this deep conversation in a corner booth, heads almost touching. They jumped a little when I walked up. Ed immediately launched into the story about a potential lead at the hospital where Megan worked, how they were discussing an in with the procurement department. Made sense on the surface. What didn't make sense was how Ed's hand lingered on Megan's arm a bit too long or how Megan's cheeks were flushed in that way. I recognized from our early dating days, but again, my own brother, my own wife. I filed it away as an anomaly, not a pattern. Ed started showing up at our place unannounced. 2. He'd bring Megan these little gifts. Her favorite coffee from that specialty shop downtown. Fancy chocolates or candles she enjoyed. When I complimented him for being thoughtful, he'd say stuff like simply watching out for my sister-in-law. I truly thought it was lovely at the time. Freaking ignorant at work. Ed was actually doing well in sales. Hit 115% of his quota 3 months in a row, started dressed better, seemed more focused. I was secretly happy that my aiding him had paid off. Coworkers would applaud me on clearing stuff out, and I'd get this misguided feeling of brotherly success. Then, around 2 months after Megan started becoming sick in the mornings, I'd hear her in the bathroom at 6 a.m., the shower running to conceal the sounds. One morning, I woke up to check on her holding her hair back as she spewed up. I mentioned maybe she was pregnant and she freaked out. Like truly panicked. Said that the hospital was experiencing a gastrointestinal ailment. She made a doctor's appointment right away, but she didn't want me to accompany her. That there was no need for concern. I had been using my calendar to keep track of her cycle. After all, we were purportedly trying for a child. This was the first time she had ever been late by 2 weeks. However, I didn't ask her directly. I assumed she would let me know when she was prepared. Perhaps she was hesitant to share the news until she was certain. Around this time, I went out for drinks with my buddy Kevin, who works in hospital administration, not at Megan's hospital. I told him about Megan's enigmatic stomach ailment when he inquired about how things were doing. Morning sickness, dude. He winked as he spoke. He had this strange expression on his face when I told him Megan denied it. Are you two still attempting? I said, yes. He simply nodded and shifted the conversation. He texted me later that evening. I don't mean to start a fight, but how is Ed doing at your business? I responded that he was meeting his sales goals and performing well. Kevin never gave a reason for his question. At this point, Mom also began to behave strangely. When I was around, she would contact Megan directly rather than our house phone as normal. Megan would say things like, "Yes, I got that recipe," or "I'll check that sale" during these calls. However, it felt like the talks went on longer than necessary. Mom exclaimed, "Oh, Josh is home," as soon as I entered the room while they were on speaker. Later, we will discuss. Megan had always been liked by Mom, but they suddenly became close. They would go shopping with each other and share inside jokes that I was not aware of. Even a family heirloom jewelry that had been pledged to my future wife since I was a child was given to Megan by Mom. Mom responded, "Well, she's your wife now, isn't she?" When I expressed my amazement at this. Her tone seemed strange for some reason. One Thursday in April, everything went apart. Megan had a shift at the hospital, so I worked from home. When she arrived home, I had planned to surprise her with her favorite takeaway for supper. After feeling separated for weeks, I'm hoping to get back in touch. I received an email notification at lunchtime informing me that the furniture delivery I had been anticipating was set for tomorrow. I was unable to locate the initial confirmation in my email to respond to, so I had to confirm the time slot. In our home office, Megan and I shared a desktop computer which I used for personal projects, and Megan for her nursing and continuing education. I was signed into my email, but I recalled that Megan occasionally arranged my emails on the computer. While I let emails to accumulate, she was a huge fan of Inbox Zero. I checked Megan's email to see whether she had sent it to a folder, after thinking that perhaps she had seen it. The subject line of an email exchange between her and my mother caught my attention at that point. "Keep Josh in the dark." I felt sick to my stomach. For what seemed like an eternity, I sat there looking at that subject line. I had a voice in my brain telling me to shut down the browser and respect her privacy, but there was also a stronger voice asking me, "What the hell is this about?" It felt like I was getting repeatedly smacked in the face when I began reading the thread handshaking. My mom and Megan exchanged emails 3 months ago on how to conceal Megan's romance with Ed. The initial communications were ambiguous. Mom asked Megan whether she was certain about this course of action and cautioned her to use greater caution around Josh, but they soon got to the point. In reality, Mom was giving her guidance on how to hide it, when to report for hospital shifts, what justifications to make, and even how to meet at her house when Dad was away playing golf. "You have at least 4 hours because Frank always plays 18 holes on Thursdays," I read one email. To help Megan and Ed scheme behind my back, Mom had made a comprehensive itinerary of when Dad would be out of the home. The bomb came next. The pregnancy was the subject of the most recent correspondence. They weren't sure if it was Ed's or mine, but Megan's doctor verified that she was 2 months pregnant. We were in the same time frame. After I indicated that the morning sickness may be pregnancy, Megan sent me a panicked email. My wife was being told to pass it off as mine by my own mother. In any case, Josh wouldn't be harmed by what he doesn't know, and he would be a better father nevertheless. It was like reading a conspiracy thriller during the entire chat. They had backup plans, time-stamp specific alibis, and even a shared calendar where they kept track of my work schedule and scheduled our meetings appropriately. What irritated me was how methodical everything was. This was more than a careless error. The 3 individuals who were meant to love me the most were involved in a planned, ongoing lie. I was physically ill. I must have spent hours reading these emails while seated at the computer. It was more terrible than the last one. I was looking for anything that would explain that this was all a sick joke, a mistake, or something else entirely. No, it was brutally obvious. I saved all of the screenshots I captured on a flash drive. I then placed the most damning ones in a folder after printing them out. I gave Chester a call. I was unable to think clearly. Someone level-headed was needed. A lawyer is necessary. Don't confront them just yet, he urged. Chester had a good lawyer. It had been a difficult second divorce for him. I was in my living room when he made the call. Put it on. Speaker. Sarah Jacobson, divorce attorney. Since we lived in a fault state and I had concrete evidence of adultery, Sarah thought I was in a strong position. The fact that I had bought the house before marriage meant it wouldn't be considered marital property. Same with most of my assets and money. She encouraged me to safeguard my funds quickly. So Chester drove me to the bank. I moved most of our joint funds into a separate account, leaving enough in the joint account to avoid claims of financial abandonment. I left exactly $5,000 in our joint account, enough to show I wasn't trying to financially strand her, but not enough to fund a new life with my brother. The rest, about $38,000, went into an individual account under just my name. I also called my investment firm and verified that my premarital assets, about $115,000 in various funds, were properly documented as separate property. By the time Megan arrived home that night, I had already set things in action. Sarah was drafting divorce papers. Chester had helped me regain some composure. I didn't confront Megan that night. I was still in shock and I needed to think carefully. "How was your shift?" I asked. My voice remarkably steady. "Exhausting," she remarked, outlining some imaginary emergency department situation. I watched her lie to my face, thinking of the emails where she reported seeing Ed at my mother's place that exact day. The toughest part was pretending everything was normal when my entire life was exploding. She inquired why Chester's vehicle had been in our driveway earlier. Apparently, the neighbors had mentioned it. I stated we'd been considering a work project. Another falsehood to add to the pile over the following several days. I behaved normal while setting things in action. I'd go to work, make small chat with Megan in the evenings, even watched our normal Thursday night program together, all while dying within. I grabbed all my crucial documents and placed them to a safety deposit box. I froze our shared credit cards. I even put mini cameras in our communal spaces, totally legal as it was my house. Chester helped me set them up while Megan was at work, just in case they try to remove or damage anything he suggested. Kevin from hospital administration texted to check in. Turns out he'd seen Megan and Ed together at a restaurant weeks earlier, appearing more intimate than in-laws should. He'd been trying to find a way to inform me. I thanked him for trying, told him I found it out on my own. My strategy started formulating on Sunday night. Megan was in the shower when a text notice flashed up on her iPad on the coffee table from Ed, stating he couldn't wait to see her tomorrow at Mom's. The treachery was happening virtually every day directly under my nose. That's when I settled on the supper plan. I contacted my dad Monday morning and asked if he might have a family dinner at our house that weekend. I told him I had some excellent news to give. "Are you sure you want to host your mom and I can accomplish it?" He extended an offer. "No, I insist. At our house, please," I said, as I considered how ideal it would be to face them all on my land. I instructed Megan to get ready for a nice supper and invited Ed to join my parents. Despite her nervousness, she consented. When I told her Ed was coming, I could feel the stress in her shoulders. That day, she texted non-stop, most likely planning stories with his mother and him. I had 2 additional meetings with Sarah in the days before the dinner. She prepared drafts of the divorce petition. Sarah gave an update over the phone on Thursday. On Friday morning, the divorce documents would be prepared. The manila envelope was burning a hole in my bag all afternoon when I picked them up during my lunch break. I took the afternoon off work on the day of the dinner to get everything ready. Food was ordered from this charming downtown Italian restaurant. I couldn't have been cooking. My dad received a bundle of emails in a bigger envelope and divorce papers in a manila envelope. The dining room's camera was recording. In case things became unmanageable. Later, I wanted evidence. I was also prepared with another surprise. I got a cashier's check for $10,000 made out to my dad after cashing out some stock options. I was aware that Ed had lately received a loan from my parents to settle his credit card debt. I reasoned that before the family broke apart, Dad should receive his money back. At 6:30 p.m., my parents were the first to arrive. Mom inquired where Megan was right away after giving me this strange, tight embrace. "She's preparing herself upstairs." My voice was fairly steady as I spoke. Ed arrived last at 6:45. I wanted to smack him right away because of his arrogant smirk. As if we were still friends, he slapped my back and gave me one of those bro embraces. It took all of my self-control not to respond. I got Megan this blue outfit for our anniversary, and she walked downstairs wearing it. We all took a seat for supper. I maintained my composure while chit-chatting about work, the weather, and my father's golf game. Mom continued to look anxiously between Ed and Megan. Megan moved her food about her plate, hardly touching anything. Dad raised his glass after the main meal, "So tell us about the happy news you wanted to share." Grinning. I took out the manila envelope from beneath the table. "I do have anything to share, actually," I remarked, passing the envelope to Megan across the table. "The documents are divorce paperwork." The room fell quiet. Megan's cheeks turned pale. "What are you discussing?" Without opening the envelope, she muttered, "Megan, I am fully aware of you, Ed, and the baby. It may be his. About your mother helping you conceal everything. Despite my inward rage, I maintained a steady tone of speech. Mom gave a sharp gasp. You have no right to accuse them of this. Megan would never do that. I took out the second envelope and gave it to my dad, interrupting her. Mom and Megan exchanged emails about the affair and how to keep it a secret from me. Lasted for a minimum of 3 months. Dad began to read, his hands shaking. He lost the color in his face. Ed abruptly knocked his chair over and sprang to his feet. It was not your place to read her correspondence, he yelled, as if it were the true offense committed here. I believe I had every reason to suspect my wife of being unfaithful to my brother and perhaps carrying his child, I said, maintaining a level voice. Megan, how long were you going to keep that a secret? Did you simply pretend it was mine? Megan started crying. It isn't what you believe, she cried. I cherish you. It was an error. While my mother covered for you, I made a 3-month error with my brother. There was no comedy in my laughter. You're pregnant now, too. Dad was reading the papers when Mom reached for them, but he kept them out of her reach. What is this, Catherine? His voice was dangerously quiet as he asked. Did you assist them in concealing this from Josh? Fake shock had turned to terror on my mother's face. You assured me, Megan, that it was Josh's. Throwing Megan under the bus to rescue herself, she remarked abruptly. Looking up from the emails, Dad did so. He had a stone-hard face. Catherine, were you aware of this? Did you assist them in keeping this a secret from our son? Quiet yet very serious was his voice. In an attempt to play victim, Mom began to cry. All I wanted to do was keep the family safe. Ed was wrong, but it wouldn't assist anyone if the family was split apart. In fact, Ed the arrogant jerk sneered. It's not that big of a deal, please. I bonded with Megan. It occurs. In any case, Josh is always at work. Seldom gives her any attention. Something broke inside of me. I got up, went around the table, and gave him a straight punch to the nose. A nice snap sounded and blood began streaming down his face instantly. He knocked over a side table as he staggered back. Mom ran to Ed and yelled, Josh, what's wrong with you? Then Dad got up and he looked more irate than I had ever seen him. Catherine, enough. Our son recently discovered the worst kind of betrayal from his brother and wife. You're also concerned about Ed's nose. He gestured to Ed. Now leave this house. Ed glared at us all while holding his bleeding nose. It's not over yet. This is something you will regret. Before hurriedly leaving via the front door, he spit. Dad grabbed her arm as Mom attempted to follow him. You remain here. We need to talk about your part in all of this. At the table, Megan was still in tears. Please, Josh. This is something we can resolve. I'm so sorry. I made a grave error. I felt nothing but icy disdain as I turned to face her. A paternity test is what I want. I need to know whether this baby is mine if you plan to keep it. In any case, we're finished. I gave my dad the cashier's check. This is to reimburse Ed for the recent loan. I reasoned that before anything goes wrong, you ought to get your money back. Dad gave the check a mournful glance before turning back to face me. I didn't know any of this was going on, son. In a desperate attempt to defend herself, Mom said that she only wanted to keep Ed safe, and that while she knew it was wrong, she believed it would only be a phase and that she didn't want to hurt me. It didn't sit well with Dad. Get your coat, he said. After my parents departed, they were departing. It seemed like hours passed while Megan and I sat in quiet. At last she said something. Now what? Right now you now gather your belongings and depart. I own the house. It is not a part of the community. You have till tomorrow to decide your course of action. It won't be here, though. After giving a hesitant nod, she headed upstairs to pack. The ruins of what I believed to be my life were all around me as I sat at the dining table, having an oddly peaceful feeling. I had made it through the worst that had transpired. From now on, everything will be rebuilt. The weeks that followed were a haze of paperwork and legal sessions. In order to stay with a buddy, Megan moved out. Interestingly enough, not with Ed. The day following the supper, I had replaced the locks. As soon as it was safe to do so, the paternity test was planned. Megan nodded without protest. I believe she had a secret wish that the child would be mine. I'm thinking that may make a difference. Ed had the audacity to call the police and report the punch, and 2 weeks after the meal, I was issued with a minor assault complaint. Sarah, my lawyer, wasn't too worried. First offense, emotional provocation, and lack of a weapon. Although it isn't a defense in and of itself, it could be important for punishment. She made it apparent that the attack would not be disregarded by the court. However, context could be on my side. Our hearing was 3 months later. Playing the victim like an expert, Ed arrived with his arm around Mom. Sarah accompanied me and Chester, and two other character witnesses from my job attested to my track record of professionalism and self-control. The court heard testimony detailing the events that preceded the incident, assessed the occurrence, and accepted some background information about the affair, not as justification, but as background. The court ultimately convicted me guilty of simple assault and fined me $500, stating that the crime was a one-time reaction to a very personal betrayal. The judge wasn't holding anything when she said, "I let emotions get in the way of better judgment," but she also hinted that Ed was lucky that things hadn't become worse. Mom seemed ashamed. Ed scowled as if he anticipated a round of applause. I thought the $500 was well spent. The day the assault charges were filed, Dad gave me a call. He was enraged. At Ed, not at me. He informed me that he had already started the process of completely removing Ed from his will. Mom reportedly had a total breakdown when she learned, vowing to leave Dad if he carried out the plan. She may leave, I informed her, but she should know that if she picked Ed above our family, I would make sure she received nothing. Dad said that to me. Get her to stop talking quickly. My dad's financial situation is serious. Smart investments, 30 years at his engineering company, assets in real estate. It makes sense that when Dad threatened to cut Ed out, Mom freaked out. This whole event exposed Mom's true nature. Ed had been brought up to believe he was infallible by her, and now she had to deal with the fallout from producing such a conceited jerk. At least she would quit publicly defending Ed, according to Dad, who stated she was still wailing and moping about her family's disintegration. A week after the supper, Dad stopped by the house. He assisted me with repainting the living room and master bedroom by bringing his tools, removing any trace of Megan's interior design decisions. You're managing this better than I would have at your age, he added, placing his hand on my shoulder after we completed working without any conversation. You have my admiration. He had no idea how much that meant. After taking a week off, I returned to work. Chester had informed the staff that I needed space since I was juggling family matters. He had moved my desk to a different floor from Ed's section by the time I got back. Well done. Chester also placed Ed on a performance improvement plan, citing ethical issues in his file, as I later learned. Although it isn't illegal to sleep with your brother's wife, Chester managed to make Ed's job more difficult without going against the law. My dad felt entitled to know what his daughter had done, so he told Megan's devout parents everything. It devastated them. Her father apologized over the phone, stating they had brought her up better than this. They informed Megan that unless she returned to God, she would not be allowed in their house. I couldn't blame them for being dissatisfied, but it was very harsh. Eventually, Ed and Megan rented an apartment together, but they didn't seem very happy based on what I've heard. Their sole guest was Mom, who crept over when she assumed Dad wouldn't be looking. All three of them were removed from my life. Banned their emails, changed my phone completely, and so forth. The only family member I still communicate with is my dad. The results of the paternity test were returned. It wasn't my baby. It was a relief in a sense. A fresh start with no biological bonds to uphold. After then, the divorce process proceeded without incident. The paternity test confirmed that it wasn't my child and the adultery was verified. Megan received very little since we lived in a phony state. I retained the majority of our assets, including the property and my retirement savings. She didn't resist at all. I believe she was aware that she had no justification. After hearing the whole tale, our buddies largely agreed with me. Some made an effort to remain impartial, stating that every story has two sides, but they soon vanished. My true buddy took charge, asked me to join them for dinner, kept in touch, and prevented me from isolating myself. I immersed myself into a new project redesigning the claims processing system for a large insurance business. The 70-hour work weeks let me forget about everything. Chester began preparing me for the role of technical director. Quicker progress than I had anticipated, but I was prepared. In addition, I shed the 15 pounds I had put on during my marriage by joining a gym and hiring a trainer who kicked my ass 3 times a week. Gained muscle. Resumed running. Completed a half marathon. 6 months following the separation. For a long time, dating was the last thing on my mind. I wasn't prepared when friends tried to set me up. Problems with trust don't go away quickly. I was doing well 6 months after everything happened. The divorce was completed. In addition to getting a promotion at work, the assault charges were resolved with a minor fine. At last, the house felt like mine once more. I completely demolished the master bathroom after renovating and getting rid of anything that made me think of Megan. New fixtures and tile. Everything is new. Created a home gym out of the guest bedroom. In the living area, a unique entertainment unit was constructed. The home turned into a project that occupied my hands and helped me concentrate. When I finished, it didn't resemble the apartment where Megan and I had shared a residence. My financial situation was better than it had ever been. Along with a $20,000 pay increase, the promotion included stock options. In addition to opening a separate investment account and making the most of my 401k contributions, I also started researching rental properties as possible sources of income. I was in a better financial situation than most men my age at the age of 28, especially since I didn't have a wife to deplete my finances. And then, unexpectedly, my mother texted me to beg to meet in a downtown diner. Stated that she needed to speak with me face to face and that it was crucial. I consented to see her when I was having lunch. To be clear, I had just 30 minutes. Once I got to the diner, I regretted coming right away. Mom wasn't by herself. With a baby carrier on the booth seat, Megan sat next to her looking worn out. I was about to leave when my mother saw me and gave me a frenzied wave. Without bothering to say hello, I strolled over and took a seat across from them. "What is this?" I questioned, staring at my mother. She was polite enough to appear uneasy. She said, "Your father doesn't know I'm here. But I had to speak with you. Ed has been taken into custody. I took notice of that. For what reason was he arrested? He was apprehended stealing funds from the business. Last week, he also received a DUI. Mom's voice cracked as she said, "He might spend a lot of time in prison. I need your assistance to save him." I simply gaped at her in shock. "Do you want me to save the day?" The brother who had an affair with my wife caused her to become pregnant and then accused me of assault? Are you crazy? Upon closer inspection, I noticed that Mom's manicure was cracked and her fancy purse was worn and scratched. Her expenditures must have been stopped by her father. Well done. Then in a little voice, Megan said, she pointed to the infant and added, "Ed left us shortly after Lily was born." "I'm not ready to be a father," he added. He was drinking excessively. Occasionally, when he was upset, he would shove me. I didn't feel happy that their relationship had fallen apart. Not sympathy for her predicament, nothing at all. He struck her. "Mom said something like that, Josh, that would somehow make me care. She is presently alone herself with the infant. No work, no help?" I gave Megan a glance. "And from me, what do you want?" She broke down in tears. "I'm at a loss on what to do. My parents refuse to speak to me. With a newborn, I can't work. Our bank account was completely depleted by Ed prior to his imprisonment. I hoped you would be able to assist, until I'm able to stand again." I took a step back and stared at these two ladies who had deceived me and were now pleading with me for assistance because the man they had picked over me turned out to be the complete jerk I had always suspected. Mom gave a nod. "Family is helpful." Family, Josh. It nearly made me chuckle. When you were assisting them in concealing their affair from me, where was that sense of family loyalty when you persuaded Megan to attempt to claim this child as her own? Mom remarked, "I made a mistake. I'm crying. I believed I was keeping everyone safe. No, your favorite was being protected." "Flatly," I replied. "And you continue to pick him now, despite all that he has done." Mom lowered her voice and leaned forward. "Your dad is acting irrationally. All of our accounts are frozen by him. Without his consent, I am unable to access any funds. He is discussing divorce, unless I sever all contact with Ed." "I think that makes sense. Dad is finally advocating for himself," I replied. I pulled out my wallet and got to my feet. I placed a women's shelter card on the table. "Megan, you can get help here. I won't. As for Ed, I don't care if he rots in prison." I glanced at my mother. "Never get in touch with me again. Tell Dad that I'm missing him and that he may contact me whenever he wants." I got out of my automobile without turning around. I sat there for a while hoping to sense anything. Anger, validation, and maybe even sympathy. However, they were no longer my issue. I was doing well without them having rebuilt my life from the ashes they had left behind. Dad gave me a call that evening. He told me he had no intention of aiding Ed and that he had discovered Mom's whereabouts and the reason behind his apology for her actions. We spent about an hour discussing the new woman I'd been seeing the house and work. Typical father-son fare. A few months later, I learned from acquaintances that Ed had accepted an 18-month plea agreement for embezzlement. After moving back to her hometown, Megan reportedly made amends with her parents, who were now assisting with the kid. In my case, I was promoted to director at work, where I now manage a group of 15 developers. The rental property I purchased is already bringing in a profit. Next summer, I intend to go hiking in Yellowstone for 2 weeks. I've always wanted to do this, but have never had the time. Even if life isn't ideal, I'm still going forward, and I've realized that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. On certain days, that suffices. Story 3. At Christmas dinner, my mom gave my sister a car and turned to me. You get memories. That's enough for someone like you. My dad laughed. She's always been bad luck and too naive to notice we use her money. I stayed silent. I just smiled and handed them a single sheet of paper. By the time they finished reading, they couldn't breathe. Is this a joke? I asked, staring at the keys in Rachel's hand. Mom didn't even look at me. She was too busy helping my sister take selfies next to the brand new Lexus parked outside wrapped in a giant red bow, like something out of a TV ad. It's not a joke, Mom said sweetly, finally turning to me. Rachel deserves it. She's worked so hard this year. And me? I asked. My voice wasn't shaking. Not yet. Mom smiled, sipped her wine, and then said, You get memories. That's enough for someone like you. Dad burst out laughing from the recliner. Yeah, memories and receipts. She's always been bad luck. Anyway, Rachel snorted, and too naive to even notice where her money goes. My jaw clenched, but I didn't say a word. I just sat there holding the wrap box I brought. Custom-made ornaments with everyone's names engraved. Pathetic. The room went back to laughing, joking, Rachel squealing, and Mom gushing. Dad is pouring another drink. No one noticed that I hadn't moved, that I was staring at them like strangers, but I was still gripping that box like it meant anything. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a single folded piece of paper. I placed it on the table in front of my mother. What's that? Rachel asked between selfies. Read it, I said softly. Mom unfolded the paper with one manicured hand still smiling. Then the smile vanished. What is this? Dad asked, leaning in. You can't be serious. Rachel grabbed it, read 2 lines, and threw it back like it was poison. And just like that, the laughter stopped. No one said a word. No one could. Because what they'd just read would change everything. You've always been a giver. Mom used to say, she just forgot to mention it. Givers in this family get eaten alive. I didn't grow up feeling poor. I grew up feeling replaceable. Rachel was the favorite before she even knew how to spell her own name. It was like the world revolved around her. Every dance recital, every dentist appointment, every tantrum. She was the center of gravity. I was the shadow, the afterthought. The one who should know better. She's your little sister, Anna. You should share. Mom would say when Rachel broke my stuff, You're older. Be the example. Dad would say when Rachel lied and I got blamed for it. I started working at 16 to help pay for groceries. They didn't ask. They expected it. Rachel got a car on her 17th birthday. I got a ride to work and a passive-aggressive comment about taking responsibility. But I didn't complain. Not when Mom guilts me into helping with Rachel's college apps. Not when Dad asked me to co-sign the loan for Rachel's community college. Just for now. Not even when Rachel dropped out after 1 semester and spent the loan money on a trip to Cabo. You're such a buzzkill, she told me when I found out. And what were you going to do with that money anyway? You don't even have a boyfriend. I should have walked away then, but I didn't. I kept paying. When Rachel got her first apartment, I helped with rent. When she quit her job for mental health, I covered her phone bill, her groceries, and even her therapy. You're doing God's work. Mom used to say, half joking, honestly, it's just so generous of you. You always had such a soft heart. Unlike me, that was the game. They praised me just enough to keep me paying, guilt-tripped me just enough to make me stay. You don't have kids, Dad would remind me, you have more freedom than the rest of us. Translation: you don't need your money, so give it to the people who do, like Rachel. Even when I moved out, they didn't stop. Mom called it a phase and sent me Rachel's electric bill in the mail. Can you just cover this until her new job kicks in? Spoiler. There was no new job. I covered it anyway. When Rachel got engaged, I paid for the bridal shower. When the wedding came, I bought her the one $200 espresso machine she put on the registry. Even though she doesn't drink coffee, she opened it in front of everyone and said, "Oh, I thought it'd be the upgraded model." My dad chuckled and muttered, still cheap under his breath. That one stung, but not as much as last month when Mom casually told me that Rachel's down payment on her new apartment came from family savings. I blinked. What family savings? She waved me off. "Oh, sweetie, it's the account we've always had. The one you've been depositing into since you started working at the firm. You knew that was for all of us, right?" No, I did not. Rachel stood next to her, grinning like it was a joke. Technically, I am family, so thanks, I guess. I felt something inside me. Shift, not crack, break. I didn't say anything that day. I didn't raise my voice, didn't storm out, but I went home and opened my laptop. I spent 3 nights combing through bank statements, old Venmo logs, and credit card records, every dollar I had sent them and every bill I had paid. Every favor I had covered. I tracked it all. The total made me nauseous. $67,392.14. That's how much I've given them since I turned 21. They bought a car, booked vacations, and renovated the guest bathroom, all with money that had come out of my account. Money I'd worked 60-hour weeks for, and not once had they said thank you. But they had laughed. I remembered the way Dad chuckled when I got passed over for a promotion. I remembered Rachel saying, "You're good with money, but not with people." I remembered Mom's voice, soft and smug. "You know you'll always be our safety net, Ud." That's when I knew they didn't love me. They used me. And this Christmas, this little Lexus stunt was their way of spitting in my face while wearing a smile. So I stopped crying and I started printing and planning. I'm not your bank. I'm not your doormat and not your safety net. I'm done being quiet. Read the paper. You'll understand. Christmas night. Candlelight. Gold plates. Napkins folded like swans. Rachel in a red velvet dress. That's on his 3rd drink. Mom humming to herself while slicing ham. Fake every bit of it. I sat at the table like an invited stranger. My name was written in cursive on a place card. My presence was acknowledged with polite nods, like a waiter had let me in by mistake. Then came the moment Mom stood up holding a box with a massive satin bow. "This," she said, beaming, "is for Rachel, for everything she's accomplished this year." Rachel clapped like a seal. "Oh my God, is this It is," Mom said. She handed her the keys. Dad raised his glass to our golden girl. Everyone applauded. Then Mom turned to me. "And for you, sweetheart?" She reached into her purse and pulled out. Not a gift, but a dusty photo of me as a toddler in a tinsel hat. "You get memories? That's enough for someone like you." I blinked just once. Dad chuckled. "She's always been bad luck and too naive to notice we use her money." The table exploded in laughter. Rachel giggled. "Seriously, though, now you should be proud. You basically bought me a car." Something inside me snapped clean. I reached into my coat pocket. "Wait," I said, rising to my feet before dessert. "I have a gift, too." I placed the folded document on the table, printed on thick cream-colored paper. "What's this?" Mom asked, already annoyed. "Read it," I said. She rolled her eyes but opened it anyway. That leaned in. Rachel peeked over her shoulder. Their faces changed line by line, at first confusion, then disbelief, then panic. This is a full expense report," Dad muttered. "Since when do you wake up?" "Since always," I said. "Every dollar I ever gave you, every bill I paid, every emergency loan I never got back, every vacation you booked was under shared family savings. You kept track of all that money." Her voice was low and venomous. "Of course I did. And the responsible one, remember?" Rachel snatched the paper and scanned it like she was looking for lies. "This is insane. You're obsessed." "No, I said I was loyal until tonight." Dad slammed his glass down. "What is this supposed to prove?" "That I know," I said calmly, "is that I finally see all of you for who you are." Mom's jaw tightened. "Don't start this drama here. It's Christmas." "Oh, you mean the day you gave my sister Alexis a call and called me bad luck?" "You're overreacting," Rachel said, waving her hand. "You've always helped. That's your thing. You're good at it." "No," I snapped. "I'm done with it." "I'm not your thing. I'm not your bank. I'm not your backup plan. You're being cruel." "Mom said we're family." "No," I said louder. "You are a group of people." I'm related too. That's it. That face turned red. You're ungrateful. We raised you. Did you? I laughed bitterly. Or did you just tolerate me because I paid the bills? Mom stood her face pale. Where is this coming from? Where I said pulling out my phone from this. I tapped play on a voice recording. Their voices filled the room clear as day, laughing, mocking, repeating the same lines they said minutes ago. Bad luck, naive, used her money. I recorded it. I wanted them to hear themselves. The room fell silent. Rachel looked like she might vomit. That stared at his empty glass. Mom's lips parted, but no words came out. And then I delivered the final blow. You said I get memories, I said quietly. Here's one you'll never forget. I'm cutting you all off. Rachel gasped, You're joking. I stepped back. No more bills, no more bailouts, no more saving you from yourselves. I've transferred the rest of the family's savings into a trust. It's locked. You can't touch it. You... What? That croaked. I also sent this report to your accountant. I added just in case you try anything funny with my taxes again. And Rachel? I turned to her. Your new car is in your name, but the insurance was paid with my card. I just canceled it. She stood up, panicking. You can't do that. You're going to ruin everything. No, I said. I'm just refusing to be part of it anymore. Then I smiled, for the first time in years. I smiled for me, and I walked out while they sat there, stunned, breathless, and choking on the consequences. They didn't think I'd follow through. They thought I was bluffing. But when the money stopped, the panic began. And when I stopped answering, they unraveled. The morning after Christmas was so quiet, it felt unreal. No screaming, no phone buzzing every 3 seconds. No demands disguised as check-ins. I made coffee. I poured it into my favorite chipped mug curled up by the window and stared at the snow piling on the railing like nothing had happened. But then I opened my phone. 37 messages. 16 from Mom. 11 from Dad. 10 from Rachel. And not a single one said I'm sorry. Just guilt. Just rage. Just desperate attempts to claw control back. How could you ruin the holiday like that? You've always been so dramatic. This isn't you. Rachel hasn't stopped crying. You humiliated her in front of the whole family. What's wrong with you? I scrolled and scrolled until I reached the voicemail from Dad. Short, cold, a whisper beneath clenched teeth. You made your point. Come back to your senses. I didn't respond. Instead, I wrapped myself in a blanket and went back to watching the snow fall. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Real peace. Not the temporary kind that comes after suppressing a fight. Not the fake silence of everything's fine, but the peace that comes when you burn the bridge and don't regret it. That peace lasted 3 days. On the 4th, someone knocked. I opened the door. It was Rachel, eyes red, eyeliner smeared, lips trembling under badly concealed lipstick. In her hands was a box, one of those family photo albums Mom used to make in the early 2000s. She clutched it like it might somehow rewrite the past. I brought this to remind you that we're family, she said quietly. I looked at her like a stranger. Because she was. A photo album doesn't make you family, I said. It just makes you visible on paper. Her eyes flashed. I saw the old Rachel trying to crawl back up to the tears. The manipulator, the actress, but then it flickered and for a second I saw something else. Are you seriously going to cut us off forever? She whispered. Just like that. I tilted my head. Not just like that. You spent 10 years building the case for it. I'm just delivering the verdict. She stood there like she didn't know whether to cry or scream, but she didn't argue. She left the album on my doorstep and walked away. That night I got a call from my lawyer. Your father attempted to access the family savings account this morning, he said. He used an old authorization form with a forged signature. My stomach twisted, but not from surprise. From disgust. I blocked it, the lawyer said. The account's frozen tight? They can't touch a cent. I laughed softly. Perfect. Let them sweat. The next morning I got another call. Blocked number. I answered out of instinct. Anna. It was Mark, my cousin's husband, their accountant. I hope I'm not overstepping, he said nervously. But your dad's trying to file paperwork claiming everything you gave them was a gift. To avoid paying taxes, I sighed. Of course he is. I wanted you to know because, well, I know how they've treated you. I've seen it for years. I should have said something sooner. My throat tightened a little. Mark, neutral, quiet. Mark finally picked aside my side. Thank you, I said. And I meant it, but it didn't stop. And 3 days later, Mom sent out a mass family email titled, What Anna Did. I opened it. I shouldn't have, but I did. It was a 3-paragraph essay on how I'd shamed the family, disrespected tradition, and abandoned the ones who raised me. It ended with, We still love Anna. We hope she comes to her senses soon. I didn't reply, but I saw that no one else did either. Not a single cousin, not an aunt, not even grandma. No one replied, and that silence said more than any reply ever could. Meanwhile, I was busy doing something completely foreign to my family living. I took time off work. I booked a tiny Airbnb cottage in a lakeside town where no one knew me and I didn't know anyone or anything. I brought books and blank sketch pads. Oversized sweaters. Zero guilt. I created a new bank account labeled Only Mine. I painted badly. I made soup from scratch. I cried one night. Not because I missed them, but because I realized how long I carried them. Like a weight I thought I deserved. I slept better in that tiny cottage than I ever had in the house I paid for, but was never welcome in a week into the trip. I got another surprise and Tilly showed up at the door. She didn't knock. She just stood there holding a homemade pie like it was a peace treaty. I let her in. I knew something like this would happen, she said, sitting at the table like she'd lived there forever. I just didn't know it would be you who finally did it. Did what? Stop pretending, she said. I blinked. Your mom called me, crying, saying you broke her heart. But all I could think was finally someone broke the cycle. I stared at her, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. She reached across the table and took my hand. I wish I had done what you did years ago. Then the final twist. 3 weeks after Christmas, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real letter from Rachel. The handwriting was shaky, but it was hers. Anna _. I don't know how to say this without sounding like I want something. I know I've been cruel. I know I treated you like a safety net. I thought that was love. Or maybe I just didn't care. But you said something that night that I've been thinking about every day since you said I'm not your thing. And for the first time I saw it. I saw what we turned you into. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to try and become someone you could maybe stand to know again. I'm sorry. I really truly am under her. I didn't write back. Not yet, but I read it twice. Then again, and for once her voice didn't sound like entitlement. Sounded human. They told me I was cold, selfish, ungrateful. But what they really meant was, I don't like who you are when you stop letting me use you. It's been 3 months since that dinner. 3 months since I dropped the paper that made them gasp. Since I told them I was done. Since I shut the door behind me and didn't flinch when no one followed. And the strangest part, I don't miss them. Not even a little. No, I didn't get that. I'm proud of you. Speech. No heartfelt apology. No teary reunion with violins in the background. What I got instead, silence. And it's the sweetest thing I've ever heard. For the first time in my life, I've stopped living as a reaction. I no longer check my phone expecting a crisis. I don't brace myself before answering emails. I don't tell you how much of my paycheck I can afford to give away without getting called cheap. Now I wake up and think, what do I want to do today? Not what does Rachel need? Not what Bill's mom is behind on, not what fake emergency is going to get pinned on me this time. No, just me. And maybe that sounds small, but when your entire identity was built on being useful, helpful, and selfless, choosing yourself feels like rebellion. They still try? Sometimes. I got a text from Dad last week. Dad, hope you're doing better. Rachel's car insurance lapsed again. Just so you're aware. I stared at it for a full minute, then replied to me, just so you're aware, I don't care. He hasn't texted back since Mom tried the guilt route in February. Mom, we're thinking of selling the house. Thought you might want to keep it in the family. Translation, please pay for it so we don't have to downsize. I left her on red. But here's the twist. No one saw it coming, not even me. Rachel started therapy, real therapy. Not the one she used to name drop for pity points, the real gut-wrenching mirror-holding kind. She sent me a second letter. I'm not asking for a relationship. I'm asking for a chance to become someone worthy of one. And you know what, I believe her. Not because I'm naive. Not because I'm soft, but because for once, she didn't ask me for money or health or forgiveness. Just a chance. That matters. I've learned something no one ever taught me as a kid. Love without respect is manipulation. Family without boundaries is a trap. And loyalty without reciprocity is slavery. And I'm done playing the fool. I used to think walking away from your family meant failure. Now I know it means freedom. They raised me to believe I owed them everything, but they were wrong. Parents don't earn sainthood just by having kids. Siblings don't earn loyalty just by sharing blood. Respect is earned. And they burned their balance with me years ago. Do I wish things had been different? Maybe, but wishing won't spend my money. Wishing won't erase the nights. I cried quietly while they laughed in the next room. Wishing won't make my scars polite. So no, I don't regret what I did. I regret that it took me this long to do it. The truth is simple. They had a daughter, a sister, a lifeline, and they turned her into a wallet, a babysitter, and a financial plan. And now they have none of those things. But I have me. And that's finally enough. Story 4. There are charges against Josephine. We require $120,000. At my door, my dad said, "You treated me like garbage after making fun of me in front of everyone at dinner. I'll cut them off if they continue to beg elsewhere." It began with one of those texts that you stare at for a long time before deciding whether or not to respond to. My mother gave me a brief sentence. "Come to supper with us, please." It matters. I didn't respond to the SMS. The phone call then arrived. I let it ring till I got a voicemail the first time. As soon as I took it up, she didn't make a direct request, but there was a hint of pressure in her voice that she utilized to get me to agree to things. I obviously didn't want to be involved. Everyone would come, she assured me. That they desired a discussion. That the moment had arrived. "Oh, you mean I should apologize again for something I didn't even do?" I said. She didn't dispute it. "Don't do it for them," she says gently after pouring quietly. "Please do that for me." I think that was my only motivation for saying yes. I booked the reservation on my own. 10 seats, a separate eating area, a candlelight atmosphere, a view of the lake, and a cuisine so elegant that the chef would likely cry if someone asked for simple condiments. I wanted it to appear sophisticated. Not for their benefit, but because I had to take charge if I wanted to act like this wasn't an act. I was also aware that they wouldn't anticipate something this well executed. They thought I would choose an inexpensive location near a highway. Knowing that I had set up something superior to anything they had ever done would annoy them. They were over 30 minutes late. With a coat slung over her shoulders, Josephine entered as if she were attending a major event. Indoors, she wore her sunglasses. As if he felt important, my father was wearing a blazer. My mother trailed after, grinning too much and looking around as if anticipating an ambush. I had already taken a seat and was drinking a nice cocktail that I didn't even like. They sat down. I nodded in silence. My mother made an effort to strike up a discussion by praising the decor. Josephine's eyes rolled. For a minute, my dad just stared without saying anything. Then, without waiting for the server to move aside, he burst out laughing. He blundered. "I'd sooner chew trash than talk to you once again." Josephine started giggling. She laughed so loudly and annoyingly that it seemed like the greatest thing she had ever heard. "Did you hear that?" she said, turning to face the unfortunate man who was still pouring water. Honesty at last. Josephine continued despite my mom's attempts to stop her reaching out. She began insulting me and calling me pathetic. Said that I had the embarrassing tendency of always attempting to hold everyone together like a depressing piece of sticky tape. I probably planned the evening just to feel important for once, she informed the entire table. Then she began to applaud loudly and sarcastically. That was the last straw. I glanced at my mother. She appeared on the verge of losing it. I only said no quietly. I stood up, put my coat on the chair's back, and turned to go. Didn't look back or say anything. Though I assumed that was all, odd emails began to arrive in my mailbox less than a week later. Naturally, not from them and not from anybody else. A name I was unfamiliar with. They contained databank statements and screenshots that I obviously wasn't supposed to have. At first, I thought it was spam. Then I saw Josephine's company's name at the top of one of the PDFs. Something terrible was going to fall on her, but I wasn't aware of it yet. Furthermore, they had stated that they would come sluggishly, and I'd make sure they felt bad about making fun of me at that table when they did. The initial email was sent on a Thursday night. "This is something you should read. There is no message within. There is only a file attached, and the name of the sender. It was obviously a phony. An arbitrary combination of numbers and letters. I thought it was a fraud. After hitting erase, I went to bed. After 48 hours, a new message surfaced. Identical source. 3 new files were included in this one. A few spreadsheets, PDFs, and a picture that looked like a conversation log from a work platform were included, but there was still no explanation. Reimbursements were mentioned in relation to someone named Paul who allegedly needed to be silenced. A third mail appeared, but I didn't open anything, and I couldn't ignore the name in the subject line this time. The Soma Tech District. Private information, prompt attention. That's where Josephine worked. It was instinct that made me click. No lock screens, no spyware. Document following document. Bank transactions between superiors, budget reports, and dozens more papers. Tens of thousands of dollars were regularly sent out to nameless numbered accounts after some of them reported suspicious payroll activities. However, I felt ill after reading one page. The message that said, "Send these through before a quarter close," had Josephine's name inked on it. No legal assessment is necessary. I continued to turn over another document displaying authorized cash payments to a fictitious business that had no internet presence that were marked as consulting. This was no mistake. It appears to have been staged. It appears dubious. It appeared that federal charges were involved. However, it wasn't until the subsequent communication that I realized the link. There was a line of text on this one. "Your sister will have a severe fall. I thought you ought to be aware before it crashes." I was up till Monday. Mom had called me 6 times and I had ignored them. I picked up the 7 at last. Her voice was terrified. Josephine had fallen, she said. Some emergency, perhaps tension, or her heart. It was unclear to the doctors if she was remaining for assessment. I inquired about her well-being. Mom claimed to be afraid. Joseph continues requesting you. I was surprised by it. I nearly said yes. I almost asked for the name of the hospital, but I didn't. My father then messaged me a few hours later. "We must have an urgent conversation at your location." I read it without responding. They arrived at my door half an hour later. Dad had never been to my residence before. He appeared weak, as if his vitality had been sapped. Mom said nothing. She simply twisted her sleeves uncomfortably. I kept them out of the house. I remained in the entrance. Dad stated they needed my help and held out a warning folder. Said that Josephine was facing serious legal issues. Used phrases like government probe and criminal charges. Claimed that her money was blocked. Paul had her corporate laptop. Then he turned to face me and demanded $120,000. I was unable to stop laughing. It exploded from me. He winced. I told him that they would misunderstand me, that they thought I would always give in, that I was the one who planned everything, and that they made fun of me so severely that they couldn't even be polite at dinner. Mom took over. Claimed I didn't understand. Claimed to be afraid. Josephine said, was unaware of what she had signed. That everything was getting out of hand. Guilt gushing from their cheeks, I gazed at them both. I briefly thought about lending a hand. Then I recalled Josephine giggling and jeering at that table as if she were taking in a show. So I declined. I went on to say that I was already aware. Dad stopped. Mom tightened her jaw. I took a step back and shut the door. No one knocked again. 3 days passed before they sent me a message. I figured they were busy or embarrassed. Hiding Josephine's footprints. I didn't care about it. For the next few days, I did something new. Nothing at all. Didn't check my email. Did not pick up the phone. I strolled to a park close by, got a cup of coffee, and just sat on a seat. No mayhem. The phone did not buzz. Not guilty. It seemed serene, almost alien. Right up till Thursday morning. I turned on the news. Anticipated weather or little criminal activity. Rather, a headline surfaced revealing criminal charges brought against Josephine Bell, the CEO of Soma Tech District. I stared at the screen, a blurry still image of Josephine entering a courtroom with 2 suited guys at her sides. Clearly, one was from federal law enforcement. Terms like financial crimes, misappropriation of corporate cash, and an official investigation in progress were mentioned by the news anchor. They said that accounting data spanning over 36 months had been provided by unidentified sources. A blown-up form with a handwritten signature that was currently being circulated online was then displayed on the screen. Her signature. Seeing everything I had previously studied in secret now be seen by the public was unbelievable. But then came the moment that left me speechless. They said my name out loud. According to insiders close to the investigation, the defendant's cousin just obtained inside records and could have been requested to help with financial support. I went cold. That information wasn't meant to be public knowledge. I hadn't talked to any reporters, I hadn't shared anything, and I hadn't released any documents. My phone exploded continuously in 10 minutes. Former coworkers, classmates, and even the man who leases my flat messaged me after seeing the news. You're correct. Then someone from a disguised number called. I typically don't pay attention to those, but this time I did. It was a reporter from a magazine with a finance concentration. He claimed to have contacts who indicated I helped uncover the wrongdoing at MAPCO. If I wanted to talk on record, he asked. I disconnected after telling him I didn't understand what he was saying. Then, however, an unexpected event happened. An hour went by. My front door was buzzed by someone. A voice I didn't recognize identified himself as Larry and indicated that he was the sender of the earlier emails. I don't need anything, he said. I just wanted to make things clear before they got worse. Despite my hesitation, I let him in. Wearing a pullover, old sneakers, and heavy circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days, he looked youthful, about 27. He crouched on the edge of my couch, clearly uncomfortable but not in danger. He clarified that he had previously worked at Madchen in an intermediate financial role, but had been let go without explanation after becoming overly involved with the company. It was no accident that he had discovered the deception. He had audio snippets, saved drives, and the full discussion as proof. Josephine typed, "Fix this quietly or we all go down together," in one discussion. Federal investigators had previously received materials from him. They were putting together a case. Then he said something that made me feel sick. He responded, "Your name was mentioned." I blinked. "What are you saying?" He gave a nod. Josephine tried to use my identity to execute money transactions when they found a preliminary draft of an unsent communication. It existed as a backup, but she never sent it. Thus, they had not only made me feel ashamed. In addition to asking for my funds when things went bad, my own blood Josephine had prepared a contingency plan that would frame me in the event that everything went wrong. Shocked, I sang back. Larry stated he thought I should be alerted before the lawsuit started. He advised me to think about hiring legal counsel because subpoenas were already being served. I had little to say when he went. I just thanked him before closing the door. I got down at my computer right away and accessed all of his prior messages and documents. Since I had changed from someone fleeing a controlling family to someone being used as a fall guy, I sent the entire batch to one individual, an attorney with whom I hadn't communicated in years. I didn't get any sleep that night. Out of rage, not fear. I kept thinking about that family meal with Josephine's mocking applause. She was going to place the blame on me after my father treated me as though I wasn't real. I collected everything and forwarded it to Bruce. He had been a classmate in law school. We had hardly communicated. There in a tall glass tower downtown, he pursued high-stakes litigation. He once advised me to ask for help only once if I ever truly needed it, but I chose a more subdued route. I'll be present. I made the decision to fulfill that pledge. He gave me a call back in 15 minutes. He did not research the backstory. "You'll want to get ahead of this coming tomorrow," he said. When I arrived at his office the next day, he already had a pile of documents with my information on them. A board covered in partially drawn dates and incidents, and 2 hot drinks waiting. Something struck me at that moment. I should probably have been more concerned about this. He took it all at face value. Worse, he believed it to be serious. I described everything. The man named Larry is drafted by the saved message. My parents' unexpected visit and request for financial assistance. Josephine's tactful attempt to shift the blame to me. He remained motionless. He had apparently handled worse. Then he asked me an unexpected question. "Are you attempting to eliminate them or defend yourself?" I stopped. I explained to him that I didn't want anyone to suffer harm. In spite of everything, I didn't want to destroy my family. I just wanted to stay out of the spotlight for something I never did. All I needed was for them to leave my orbit, disconnected from anything with my name on it. He looked at me and calmly replied, "Then we'll accomplish both." Bruce composed a message. Ice cold, precise, and fully professional. It was sent to the attorneys working on Josephine's behalf, who we discovered had already been reaching out to past staff, possibly in an effort to quietly manage the situation. The letter spelled one point out clearly: if my identity appeared anywhere in press statements. courtroom materials, or legal defenses, we would instantly pursue charges for libel, interference, and restitution. And Bruce was absolutely serious. That same day, he'd Larry Bird the note directly to the lead attorney at her firm. By the next morning, their representatives were on the line. They sounded unsettled. They denied everything. They claimed it was just confusion. They insisted there had never been any intent to name me. They expressed deep regret for any unease it caused. Bruce responded flatly, "Make sure your client fully understands that." Then he added with a smirk, "Because if she doesn't, everything will be made public." All of it. They backed off instantly, but that wasn't the end. Several days later, a new message arrived. It wasn't from a journalist, not from my mother, not from anyone I expected. It was from Josephine. Just one sentence. "Please meet me just one time. You don't need to talk, just listen." And honestly, for a brief moment, I almost replied. Then Bruce called, and what he told me flipped everything upside down. I hadn't touched Josephine's note. It sat unread like spoiled leftovers left on a counter. I kept waiting for more. Another text. A call, maybe even threats. But nothing came. Just that single message. She probably assumed my silence meant I was thinking it over. Maybe I was. Then Bruce phoned. He didn't waste any breath. "You need to know something," he said. One of his trusted sources, someone who owed him, caught wind of a sealed court motion. Her legal reps were pushing. It hadn't gone public yet. But here was the core. They were trying to make a deal with the prosecution. She'd cooperate, turn over identities, documents, and emails, everything they requested. In return, they'd decrease the rates. But here's the bit that wrecked me. My name was one of the individuals. She was ready to capitulate. Not as someone to blame this time, as someone reportedly involved. An individual who could have accessed internal documents. Someone who apparently acquired secret facts and neglected to disclose them. A person who may have profited materially. Bruce stayed constant. I did not. I questioned how this could possibly be logical. I didn't work there. Until recently, I knew absolutely nothing. I hadn't spent a dime. That didn't matter, he said. Their willingness to spin it that way was what counted. If it caused any uncertainty, if it stuck even for a moment. Everything I'd spent years constructing might go apart, including screenings, professional harm, travel problems, and credibility loss. All because I was disposable in Josephine's eyes. Bruce then created a second document. This one, unfriendly. He provided the court with an advance statement the next morning, along with all of the communications papers and the whole archive. For an added punch, Larry had Larry Bird set up a time for Larry to unequivocally demonstrate that I had nothing to do with the matter. He also formally demanded that my identity never be mentioned by Josephine's lawyers in any trial documents or hearings. We would file a lawsuit for Larry Bird right away if they did. A false charge. Bruce then sat back in his chair and stated that everything would spill if they pushed it much more. Within 2 hours, one of Josephine's law firm colleagues was on the phone suggesting that the threat was effective. They said that Josephine had no intention of naming me. They claim to be changing the wording. They contend that the previous motion was misunderstood. Bruce instructed them to formally affirm it. They complied on paper, but things weren't finished yet. I got a new email later that evening. Not from Josephine. Larry did it. "There's more," he wrote. "Something I previously didn't reveal. You should see it now, even if I wasn't sure you were ready." A wobbly, low-quality video clip that appeared to have been taken with a phone laying on a desk was attached. Josephine and my father appeared on the TV. They appeared to be sitting in their home study. Josephine seemed to be crying, or at least acting like she was. She continued to explain about how things were getting out of control, how she couldn't stomach going to jail, and how Joseph isn't even aware of what would happen if he's held accountable. "He is the end of it." With a hesitant nod, my father said, "He'll be fine. He always manages to figure things out. He always does." I must have silently listened to it 20 times. At that point, my idea of family entirely disappeared. It didn't seem like betrayal to watch the clip. It had the feel of emotional aloofness, like he was picking a lunch choice. The father who had assured me that I would always be his son talked nonchalantly about sacrificing me. I was no longer angry. I had total dissociation. Bruce wasn't shown the footage right away. I didn't want to add to the legal battle he was already managing. I needed a detailed strategy that would not only protect me but also ensure that Josephine and my father understood they would not escape unscathed. I became totally mute as a result for the days ahead. I skipped work, didn't check my inbox, and didn't answer my mother's calls. I remained in my flat. I already had everything I needed. Bruce's legal documents, Larry's folder of data. That video was terrible. I let everything to boil, going over every possibility and charting every outcome. Then I did something they would never have predicted. I set up an appearance in the public press. I know that seems dramatic, but wait a minute. It took me less than 2 days to organize everything. I got in touch with an investigative journalist I had known for years. A distinguished writer with a reputation for delving into familial deceit and private wrongdoing, she is hardly a glamorous network anchor. He was cautious, calm, and very aware of what I was carrying. He didn't insist on specifics. "Bring the documents to my office," he replied simply. He had his photography gear ready when I got there. I provided Tim Lorraine all of the preserved emails, all of the papers, the recorded video, and a detailed account of the previous several months. The treachery, the quiet, and the deceit. I maintained my composure. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I wasn't looking for trouble. All I wanted was the truth to be known. I instructed him to report everything. Then he posed a question that caught me off guard. "Why now, Joseph? Why speak up?" I gave him a glance and answered, "To ensure that they never get the opportunity to do this again and to safeguard my reputation." It wasn't me that was devastated. They attempted to eliminate me. And I'm not going anywhere. It wasn't simply a small headline the next day. It exploded all over. This was not considered a local dispute. It quickly became the subject of front-page news articles. The crisis involving Josephine's firm was only one aspect of the story. They also reveal the family's corruption. According to reports, Josephine had tried to hold me accountable for crimes in which I was not involved. They showed how my father had consented with knowledge, preparing to let me take the hit while seeming to be some noble patriarch. The response came instantly. Through Bruce, Josephine's legal team made the initial contact. They sought a settlement, of course. They acknowledged that a guilty plea was likely and that the evidence against her was indisputable. However, that wasn't the surprising aspect. The surprise. They asked whether I would be willing to make a statement to seem like a forgiving relative rather than to deny culpability. It was a stretch to say that I, Larry, was responsible for the charges. In fact, I laughed. It was almost gorgeous in its ridiculousness. I informed them that I would only talk under one unchangeable stipulation: complete immunity with no conditions or exceptions. My future, my identity, and my image. Complete protection. To clean up the mess they made if they needed my assistance. Every aspect would have to be admitted. Their lawyers fought back. But they finally agreed after a day of frantic negotiations. I met with Josephine's attorneys the next day in the building where her firm is located. The majority of the conference was ceremonial. I went over each page and signed the papers, thus distancing myself from the matter legally. They promised to make it public that I was not involved in the crimes. And the most appropriate of all twists, my dad never showed up. Not even after the paperwork was completed and sent. One aspect of the legal language resonated with me, even though the media circus had already begun to die down. The company's leadership officially removed Josephine's name. She is no longer the company's golden child. To deal with growing debts and legal challenges, the company itself was being auctioned off piece by piece. Her alleged pals had already left, seeking their next chance. Everything they had constructed came tumbling down at that same instant. However, that was the beginning of true independence for me. No more bills, no more negative publicity, and no more harm to repair. As well as the media. They quickly lost interest. The clicks vanished as soon as they stopped. My mother sent me the last SMS 2 weeks later. "Josephine is done. I apologize." "Joseph, I wish it could be undone." At that moment, something finally came to me, so I remained silent. Not all justice occurs in front of a court, and not every family is deserving of restoration. Regaining control of your story and deciding how it ends can sometimes lead to true victory. Story 5. I almost dropped my phone in horror when I saw my mother's name flash over the screen. Her calls were as seldom as eclipses of the sun. In the last 5 years, exactly twice. Once to tell me of Aunt Meredith's passing. Additionally, I casually mentioned that my sister was getting married. I didn't receive an invitation to the wedding, naturally. Hi there, I gave a cautious response. Erica. The tone of her speech remained flat. I recalled. This weekend your sister Vanessa and her spouse will be in town. They would want you to join them for supper on Friday at 6 o'clock. She hung up after that. I gazed at my mobile device. Even at 30, I still feel like the unwanted kid. I had the option to decline. Most likely should have. However, a part of me that still yearned for their acceptance consented to leave. Friday came sooner than I had hoped. I didn't want to bother with parking, so I took a cab. Before long, I was standing in front of my parents' modest suburban house, the same house where I had grown up feeling inconspicuous next to my sister who was my golden child. I knocked on the door after smoothing down my understated yet professional black outfit. No response. I walked inside after testing the handle and discovering it was unlocked. From the dining room came the sound of conversational laughing. It sounded like a big family reunion, not just my sister and dad as promised. Fantastic. More evidence of my never-ending disillusionment. Situation. I observed the same thing when standing at the dining room doorway. At either end of the table are my parents. Every other chair was occupied by Vanessa and her husband, who occupied one side like royalty, and several aunts, uncles, and cousins. My sister was the center of attention. By summer, the second location ought to be operational. Vanessa was saying, making a lot of gestures. Aren't you, honey? Brian's business is just blowing up. Brian. Her husband gave a smug nod. I only knew that he had a car repair shop because cousin Amy would occasionally text me about it. Caleb is already using complete sentences and engaging in family gossip. Vanessa went on mentioning her son, who is 2 years old. He is advanced for his age, according to the pediatrician. My mom grinned proudly. Dad gave a nod of approval. The gathered family members uttered the proper applause. I was still unnoticed. I stood clumsily at the doorway looking around for a seat, but there wasn't one. Normal. Not that I was supposed to remain. Then Vanessa's smile changed as her gaze came to rest on me. It's different yet still there. Sharper, somehow. Look who has finally made up their mind to join us. With a loud announcement, she called everyone's attention to me. Erica, come on in. For once, sit among successful folks. I grinned to myself but said nothing, and Linda moved her chair over to make room at the table's corner. Squeezing in, I balanced on the seat's edge. Vanessa went on as I was saying. Here in town, we're opening the second location. Brian's going to commute between both stores until he finds a boss he trusts. My parents gladly nodded. I'm really proud, as is your dad. Mom remarked, extending her hand to pat Vanessa's. For yourself, you've done really well. After a minute of reveling in the praise, Vanessa abruptly turned to face me. With a fake sweetness in her voice, she replied, So, Erica, are you still employed at that restaurant as a waitress? There was silence at the table. Everyone looked at me. I had, in fact, begun working as a waitress immediately following high school. My parents claimed to be saving money for Vanessa's schooling. Therefore, they had declined to assist with her college expenses. I had to fend for myself. Yes, I said plainly, still in the same eatery. I didn't go into detail or specify my precise role. Let them make their own assumptions. Then she let forth a sound like glass shattering as she laughed. Erica, you're 30 years old and still carrying plates for tips. You've always been such a failure, God. The family members laughed. My parents nodded in accord and exchanged knowing looks. Instead of feeling offended, I chose to grin to myself. If only they were aware. In fact, Vanessa declared, grabbing everyone's attention with a clap of her hands. There's a reason I brought you all together. Brian and I plan to take everyone out to supper at the city's top restaurant on Saturday of next week to commemorate his accomplishment. It will be incredible. Murmurs of excitement echoed around the table. Everyone appeared happy until Vanessa came around to face me. Except from you, Erica. You're not invited. She had a poisonous smile. Nice. You're too impoverished to attend a family gathering at such a location. You'd be out of place. My mom interrupted before I could reply. Unless, of course, you are a waitress there. At least then you could help us. There was laughing around the table. I could see them all anticipating my response, anticipating pleas, tears, and shame. Rather, I wiped my mouth with a tissue, finished the meal on my plate quietly, and remarked, I would insist you all enjoy yourselves. If they hadn't been my family, their sad expressions would have been hilarious. When it became evident that I would not give them the breakdown of emotions they had hoped for, They didn't care about me for long. The topic of the forthcoming dinner came up again. What they would order and which restaurant they would visit. Where would people sit? I slipped away from the table, grabbed my purse, and called a cab. Nobody saw me go. Nobody bid farewell. I was dropped off at my building, a posh high-rise in the heart of downtown, by the taxi. As I made my way through the marble lobby to the private elevator that took me straight to my penthouse apartment, the doorman called out to me by name. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony as I poured myself a glass of pricey wine and kicked off my shoes. I was still viewed by my family as the unfortunate waitress. The failure of the family. They were unaware of my transformation. I kept thinking about the beginning of it all. I began working part-time at a seedy downtown cafe when I was 16. I had to do it not because I wanted to. I need new jeans, Mom. There are holes in these. One day after school, I begged. She was assisting Vanessa with her science project and hardly looked up. Erica, stop being so demanding. Every time you desire new clothing, we can't afford to buy them for you. While I was still using a flip phone from 3 years ago, Vanessa had the newest iPhone and her closet was overflowing with brand new clothes. So I got the cafe job. The pay was terrible, the hours long, but it meant freedom. I stopped asking my parents for anything. Bought my own clothes, my own phone, my own life. I remember overhearing my mother at a family dinner when I was 17. Erica will probably be a waitress all her life, she told E.T. Linda, she's not bright or gifted like Vanessa at 18. After high school graduation, the ultimate blow came. We can't help with your college fees. My father declared we're saving for Vanessa's schooling. She has enormous promise. That night, I packed my belongings and fled home. I landed a job at a restaurant in the city center. Not prominent, but they recruited everyone willing to work hard. I moved into a tiny apartment with 2 other waiters, Maria and Jen. We barely made ends meet, but at least I was spared from my family's relentless comparisons. I'd see images on social media of Vanessa visiting beach resorts with my parents or skiing in Colorado or exploring Europe. Then came the happy announcement of her attending college, the education my parents couldn't afford for me but somehow managed for her. I ignored their ideas and concentrated on my work. Despite having a fantastic downtown position, Bellini's was having financial difficulties. The design was out of date, the cuisine was average, and the service was patchy. However, I never grumbled, studied everything I could, and showed up every day. I paid for my own restaurant management classes at the community college, 1 class at a time during my free time. Marketing techniques, personnel management, engineering menus, and restaurant financing. After working at Bellini's for 2 years, I saw that things were becoming worse. Weekly decline in clientele, increased worker turnover, and food waste. I saw Robert Dawson, the proprietor, sitting by himself with a drink of whiskey one evening after closure looking at spreadsheets. "Mr. Dawson, is everything all right?" As I was cleaning tables, I inquired. He let out a deep sigh. "Not at all. Erica is considering rebranding or selling. It's dying here." After hesitating, I plucked up the confidence. "Rebranding isn't going to help." He jerked his head up. "Please pardon me. I'm sorry, but that's reality. Neither the name nor the logo are the issue. The idea itself is the problem." I thought he would become irate, but instead, he pointed to the chair opposite from him. "Give me additional details." So I did. I clarified that our chef only created 3 of the 20 previous additions on our menu, which was too long. How then we didn't have the quality to support the costs, despite our best efforts to appear upscale. How our short hours were causing us to entirely miss the lunch crowd. What would you do differently? He inquired about his interest in genuinely concentrating on our strengths. Reduce the menu to a total of 15 items, the ones that people genuinely place orders for. Establish tiers of pricing, provide reasonably priced lunch alternatives and high-end supper options, and launch a delivery service for those who work late in the nearby office buildings. Robert gazed at me. "Where did you find out about all of this?" "For 2 years, I saw this firm lose money while taking management classes at the community college." His laughter was one of astonishment rather than derision. "Erica, what is your age?" 22. Slowly, Robert nodded. "How would you feel about managing Bellini's new restaurant?" "Assist me in putting these modifications into effect. I need someone who is knowledgeable about this industry's theory and reality. Someone who sees issues and solutions rather than just grievances." After 2 weeks, I had a tiny office of my own and the daunting task of turning a failing restaurant around. It was both thrilling and terrifying. I oversaw a small renovation that gave the establishment a more modern feel while working 18-hour days, redesigning menus, retraining employees, and setting up new procedures. Without being fashionable, Bellamy's headlines went out the door 6 months later. Throughout lunch and dinner, our delivery service was operating continuously. We would increase revenue by 45% while reducing expenses by 30%. We added a second store across town and a third in the financial district within 2 years. Because we had nearly perfected our plan, we were successful right away. Robert invited me to supper on my 24th birthday. Not at one of our eateries, but at the city's most upscale establishment. For you, I have a suggestion. After we placed our purchase, he remarked, I want to make you a partner. 30% of all of our group's restaurants, both present and prospective. My drink almost suffocated me. That is overly giving. It isn't giving. It's business. 3 thriving restaurants have been created out of one failed one by you. Before someone else snatches you away, I would be foolish if I didn't lock you in as a companion. Everything changed that night. I was no longer only a worker. I was a proprietor. After that, we quickly grew, adding 2 additional sites in less than a year. By the time I turned 26, I purchased my condo in a penthouse. I established my own investing portfolio by the time I was 28. Even while my family still believed that I was carrying dishes for tips, I now at the age of 30 managed 8 prosperous restaurants with more than 200 staff members. A notification rang on my phone, bringing me back to the present. Our reservation manager at the original Balinese site, Melissa, sent out a message confirming a large group reservation for next Saturday at 7 p.m. Vanessa Cooper is her name. After looking at the message for a while, I started chuckling. For her large family gathering, my sister had picked my restaurant out of all the ones in the city. That's the party I didn't deserve to be at. I was anxiously anticipating Saturday for the entire week before. I experienced an odd mixture of exhilaration and dread whenever I imagined my family entering my business without realizing it was mine. During our weekly management meeting, Robert observed that I was preoccupied. Is everything all right? When everyone else had left the meeting room, he inquired, You don't seem right today. Over the years, Robert had become into more than just a business associate. He was my buddy, my mentor, and the closest thing I had to family these days. When they realized I had nowhere else to go for holidays, his wife Diane and their children would frequently invite me over. On Saturday, my sister is taking my whole family to Bellini's. I described the first place. He raised his eyebrows. These are the same folks that believe you are still a waiter. The people who didn't extend an invitation to you for dinner? I gave a nod. That's convenient then. A little grin appeared on his face. Will you let them know I'm considering it? Robert reclined on his seat. I've known you for 8 years, Erica. My business has been rebuilt and developed beyond my wildest expectations by you. And aside from those individuals, you have never once requested praise from anybody else. Don't act as though you don't care about this, he was correct. A part of me still yearned for my family's acceptance despite all of my accomplishments, or at the very least, wanted to see their expressions when they saw how mistaken they had been about me. By agreement, I'll be there. When Saturday night finally arrived, I was really anxious. An hour prior to my family's reservation, I arrived to Bellini's to make sure everything was in order. I didn't have to. Although our crew was flawless, it provided me with a task. I put on my executive name badge, which said it all, and a fitted black dress. Owner and Executive Director Erica Mitchell. After that, I waited in my office, which had a glass window that looked out over the main dining area. My parents, Vanessa and Brian. A number of aunts and uncles and a couple of cousins arrived together. There were 14 individuals in all dressed to the nines. I observed the host guiding them to our best table, a big round table in the middle of the dining room that Melissa had reserved without my request. Vanessa was obviously the center of attention as she held court and made ostentatious gestures. My parents nodded in agreement with everything she said, beaming with pride. I felt as though a scene from my early years was being reenacted. I remained in my office until they had placed their appetizer and drink orders. Then, inhaling deeply, I went outside and approached their table slowly. I was first noticed by my cousin Amy. She didn't say anything, but her eyes widened a little. Then the others saw me coming one by one. Look who it is then. Vanessa made a strong announcement. Will you serve as our waitress this evening? How ideal. Calmly, I grinned. As a matter of fact, I will not be able to serve you tonight. Too preoccupied with other tables. Brian grinned. Too busy managing the eatery. I pointed to my name in response. Badge and our group's 7 other members. The ensuing hush was deafening. My mother's jaw dropped. An intriguing hue of crimson appeared on my father's face. Vanessa appeared to have been smacked. This place is yours. At last, my dad was able to inquire. I checked with Robert Dawson Cohen. It's been 6 years since we became partners. However, you claim to still be employed at the same eatery. It was uttered accusingly by my mother. I am. I simply did not state my role. I gave a shrug. You didn't inquire. The first person to get well was Linda, who had seated me at the family supper. This is amazing, Erica. The eatery is stunning. You must be really proud. Everyone wanted to talk to me all of a sudden. What had I done? When did this occur? How come I hadn't told them? My cousins appeared to be amazed. My uncles and aunts appeared to be sincere in their interest. The only people who sat in stunned silence were Vanessa, my parents, and my immediate family. I apologized for disturbing your festivities, but I had to suggest today's special. The truffle risotto costs $80 per plate, but it's really good. It could be a little pricey. As I say this, I look straight at Vanessa, repeating what she said about me being too poor to go. Anger and embarrassment caused her face to flush. Her audience had abandoned her. Everyone's focus was now on me. I'd better go back to work. I said, have fun this evening? I went back to my office and shut the door. I could see the mess I had left behind through the glass. All of my family members were speaking at once. Every time Brian attempted to talk, Vanessa, who was enraged and red-faced, snapped at him. My folks were in a stupor and kept looking toward my workplace. I should have felt triumphant. This was the moment I'd sometimes fantasized about: the big reveal, the shocked faces, the sudden realization that they'd underestimated me all along. But instead, I felt empty. Their approval or disapproval shouldn't matter anymore. I had built a life without them, succeeded without them. What was I trying to prove? I turned away from the window and focused on my laptop, reviewing plans for our newest location. We were expanding to another city next month, our first venture outside the metropolitan area. There was a ton of work left. An hour later, while my family was finishing their desserts, my office phone rang. It was the host station, Miss Mitchell. Your parents are requesting to talk with you before they go. I hesitated, then agreed to visit them. They entered my office, cautiously glancing around at the medals on the walls. The framed restaurant reviews, the images of me with Robert at each big opening. This is extremely amazing, Erica, my father responded stiffly. Thank you. We'd like to have supper with you someday, my mother said. At your house. We'd love to see where you reside today. I understood precisely what was occurring. All of a sudden, I was no longer the family failure. I was rich and successful, worth recognizing, worth understanding. I apologize, but I'm now really busy, I informed my parents. My whole focus is on opening a new site. Enjoy your evening. The family gathered outside the restaurant after they departed, and I observed from the window of my office. Clearly irritated that her huge celebration had been overshadowed, my sister was making a lot of gestures. My parents appeared to be in astonishment. The other family members continued to stare back at the eatery, presumably still taking in the situation. My parents left me 3 missed calls and a text message asking when we might meet when I woke up the following Sunday. I didn't answer. My mother left a voicemail and 5 more calls on Monday, recommending lunch at whatever place you choose, sweetie. On Tuesday, my father expressed his pride and desire to re-enter my life. By Wednesday, cousins were receiving calls from aunts and uncles. Amy texted that she was so impressed by my achievement that everyone was talking about me. Linda also phoned to tell that she had always had faith in me. An easy way to change the past. I was going through applications for a new chef post on Thursday morning. An unknown number called on my phone. I replied, Erica Mitchell, against my better judgment. It's Brian, Erica, the husband of your sister. That was not what was expected. Brian, what can I do for you? Let me get straight to the point. My vehicle repair company is growing, as you are aware. Regarding the financing, the bank is being challenging. As a family investment, I was hoping you may be open to lending us $50,000. I almost burst out laughing. Why would I do that too? He responded, well, we're family. As though that clarified everything. And for Vanessa, it would mean a lot. Since Saturday night, she has been agitated. The sibling she had spent years rejecting as useless probably destroyed her moment of fame. Brian, good luck with the bank, but I'm not interested in investing in your company. Erica, hurry up. Now you have money. Would not harm you in order to assist your sister. That's the same sister that publicly referred to me as a loser and said that I couldn't afford to go to her dinner. That sister. A pause occurred. That was not her intention. Vanessa gets, you know. Regretfully, I was aware that I had grown up in adolescence knowing precisely how Vanessa became entitled, harsh, and always supported by our parents. No, I would say, never call again. I ended the call. Vanessa herself phoned less than an hour later. You are a self-centered jerk. Without a preface, she spit. Your refusal to assist Brian is your method of retaliating for your long-standing jealousy of me. Vanessa, I'm not envious of you. I wasn't. So why don't you give us the loan? Obviously, you can afford it. All you want is for us to suffer. I inhaled deeply. This family neglected me for years. Years being told I wasn't worthy, intelligent, or good enough. You suddenly recall that I exist now that you have what you desire. There was a long stillness. Fine, she eventually said. Be that manner. Everyone is discussing how having money has made you cruel and aloof. Your belief that you are too wonderful for your family. Right now, the twisted logic nearly made me laugh. Vanessa, goodbye. After that, I blocked her number right away. The following weeks were filled with work. We hired important personnel, completed the designs for the new site, and adjusted our menu to suit the new market. Robert and I worried about 1,000 details for long days, meetings, and longer nights. My family persisted in their efforts to make amends. My office received flowers. My mother's voicemails were filled with tears. I received an email from my father recalling my childhood achievements which he had never recognized before. I paid them all no attention. As we went over the design ideas for the new site one evening, Robert stated, you know, you could just have one meeting with them and be done with it. I raised my eyes from my computer. Why would I do that? Because it's distracting you and they won't quit. He was not mistaken. Thoughts of my family kept creeping in even though I tried my hardest to concentrate only on our growth. Recollections of previous slights. Fantasies of telling them precisely what I believed, envisioned discussions where they apologized after years of disrespect and favoritism. What would I even say to them? Robert shrugged. The reality that you don't need them in your life and that you created it without them. Right now, or that you'd like a relationship but on different conditions. Closure could help you move on in either case. Perhaps I admitted, but not just yet. There is too much work for us to do. And we did. The new site was our largest project to date. We were building a gourmet event venue with private dining rooms, cooking lessons, and a rooftop bar in addition to a restaurant. It was big, costly, and just the challenge I needed. On the day we completed the lease, Robert and his wife Diane took me out to celebrate. To fresh beginnings, Diane toasted, lifting her glass, and to the greatest business partner Robert could have found. Robert said, I still find it hard to believe you pitched me that restaurant makeover at the age of 22. I've never made a better choice than to listen to you. I said thank you with a warmth that was unrelated to the wine. For putting your faith in me. For having faith in me when others did not. Diane gripped my hand as she stretched across the table. That is the role of true family. Erica, they believe in you. They support you. They appreciate your triumphs instead of becoming frightened by them. Her comments touched home. The folks at this table, Robert, Diane, our restaurant managers, our cooks, even our regular customers had showed me more support and respect than my biological family ever had. They were my true family. Right now. I saw that they were all grinning as I looked around. I understood that neither my sister nor my parents needed to be reconciled. Their late interest in my